Hello, everybody. I'm John Pollock. Welcome to Post Wrestling's Best of 2019 show. I am joined by Wai Ting and two of the best we have to offer, Braden Herrington and Davie Portman. Braden.
Hello.
Davie.
Hello, hello, hello.
Wow, we're in the post office. Again. Second year in a row.
You guys have spent quite a bit of time in here over the last couple of months.
Just a little bit. A bit more time with each other, but yeah.
Well, yeah, we're roommates.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. You got the call back this year.
Yeah, we're really excited. We were shocked and honored to get the call last year with the launch Post Wrestling. Shout out Post Wrestling, because you guys are on a roll and you invited us and we were like, oh my goodness, what an honor. And now we're asked back again? Man, we must be doing something
I've got to say, I think we've matured as well since last year. Because last year, I remember, night before, it's like, yo, what was best social media account?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
It was harder last year.
This year, it's like, I found it way easier.
Yeah.
Maybe because I feel we've watched way more wrestling than we did last year.
Yeah, we've watched a lot. We're nowhere near these two.
Nowhere near these two.
We watch a lot of
But
wrestling.
we're getting there. We're getting there.
Coming close. I have to say, it's an honor to be on the the upNXT Patreon feed as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Simulcast, everybody.
That's right. Simulcasting. We're getting them simulcasting.
Like Raw and Nitro.
Wow. Could
Yes.
you imagine?
This is March 26, 2001, all over again.
Yeah, we don't just watch NXT, but we watch it every Wednesday.
Yes.
Well, everyone is very familiar with this show. We are going to go through all of the various categories, looking at the very best of 2019 and what it had to offer. Quite an important year that I think we'll look back on within professional wrestling. And for those that enjoy this show, next week is when we'll get all the garbage out of our system as we fully dive into 2020 and get all the negativity out on the Worst Of show. So that will be coming up next week, which will be out Tuesday. If you are a patron at Post Wrestling or for upNXT, you will get that show on Tuesday, 2 days earlier than we will be releasing it. So either Patreon feed you subscribe to, you'll get early access to it.
Yes. Patreon.com/upNXT is ours. And because of you two, so many people have gotten to listen to us and then join our Patreon and support us. And it's been like a wild ride. So you guys asked us to come on any show. We're always going to come on any show you invite us, because you guys are amazing. Shout out John and Wai again.
Shout out John Pollock.
Well, we have a lot of categories to get into, so we are going to dive in immediately to all of it, and we will be posting up the lists as well. And just for the fun of it, I have also pulled up last year's choices as well. So we will be referring to that and seeing if there were any repeats or if some are just going to look absolutely terrible in hindsight. I don't know where this category came from. Somehow I got best moment of 2019 that we did not do last year, that apparently I did not give out to you guys ahead of time.
No.
So I think I just fully created this and didn't tell anybody about it. So my
It makes
apologies.
sense.
I mean, I don't know where this came from, but it seems like a meaningful category. I'm the only one who prepared for this. These three, unfortunately, just got this one out of left field. So this is very much, I think, the best moment. You should be able to come up with it in just a couple of seconds.
I did.
If you need a whole lot of thinking,
disagree.
it wasn't that great of a moment, was it?
No.
Because it had no memory. So, best moment of 2019. We are going to start off. The wheel lands on Braden Herrington to start things off. What was your best moment as you throw out the calendar of 2019?
Yeah, I mean, this list, I'm going to be a little biased because I also went to a lot of wrestling. I went to my first WrestleMania week or weekend and whatever, and there was a lot of good moments that week that I really loved in the world of wrestling. But going to a WrestleMania in an arena full of people wanting to see Kofi Kingston beat Daniel Bryan and finally become champion, I don't know how you can describe. I don't know how these wrestlers, they come out and they perform in such audiences like this, but to even stand in such a stadium where everyone's losing their mind, it like gives you goosebumps. And Kofi Kingston is not even one of my favorite wrestlers in my any list really, but the emotion from watching his whole career, I've been watching wrestling since he's become there, and just seeing that. Everyone going crazy. He did it for the culture, and it was just crazy. It was amazing. That's a moment of the year for sure.
Wai?
I feel the same way with Braden Herrington. I was also there on the floor for that particular event and that particular match, and it I've seen a lot of wrestling this year, but a lot of it I don't think I'll remember beyond this particular show. But certainly I think it was that particular victory that I think I'll remember forever, you know? And I think in hindsight, it's really easy to think about like the result of that match and how could it be anything but Kofi Kingston winning. But I think in that particular moment, because of the precedent that's been set in the past with things like, you know, Booker T versus Triple H, you really were unsure. And so the moment that Kofi Kingston actually won, I thought there was still a little bit of shock on everybody's faces. In particular, I was watching grown men around me hug each other, crying. And you see videos online of like Shad Gaspard and MVP hugging each other, real tears down their face.
Those videos really added to the legacy of that moment.
To me, it wasn't just a match between Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston, but it was somebody who was a representative of an underrepresented minorities. Facing and challenging the status quo. And that's, I think, what that moment represented to so many people. And to me, it was like pro wrestling at its best.
Davey?
Yeah, exactly the same. Braden and I just ran down our top 10 of the year, and this match was in there. So recently rewatched it, and I was on a mega bus coming back from Montreal, and I was tearing up on the bus watching this on my laptop.
Is that because you were... Oh, sorry, this was from Montreal. I think a lot of people were tearing up on the bus ride home from WrestleMania because it was 4 a.m. and they've been waiting for 3 hours in the rain.
I was there at WrestleMania. I sat with a listener of ours, a long-time listener, a guy called Pierce, who's awesome, from Chicago. He is an African-American, and he was like, we play the game where we go, we're going to buy tickets last minute. We're just watching them on StubHub. We keep trying back at the box office. And he's like, I got to be there to watch Kofi win. And we ended up getting tickets together, sat together. I'm a massive Kurt Angle fan. He was a hero of mine. So I wanted to be there for his retirement. And both of us teared up when Kofi won. And after Kurt Angle lost and retired, he was like, oh, I'm here for you. And I was like, yo, like that was the real moment. Kofi winning there. It meant so much. It's... The noise in the domes are hard, like the stadiums are hard because the noise just escapes. And watching it back on TV recently, you can hear it get louder and louder and louder, and everyone's into it. And as Wai said, we're conditioned with it. Nothing would surprise you in wrestling. We saw Booker T lose, and that whole story was built up for Booker T to win and overcome the bad guy, and they didn't do that. And when Bryan hits that running knee after all the interference and stuff, you go, fuck, they're going to do it again. And they pulled the trigger. Kofi won, rightfully so. Biggie and Xavier are incredible. Just genuine reactions there. Xavier's just sobbing as they're revealing
everyone's sobbing.
The title, which chokes you up. Watching other people cry makes me cry.
Yeah.
I feel like a genuine, amazing, happy moment. By far, moment of the year.
And his kids, too.
His kids. Yeah. Holding up the shirts, climbing the turnbuckle.
They got rid of that hemp
adorable.
Belt, they did.
That's what made it more special. The fact that they could do the
oh, that's
reveal,
right. The hemp belt.
I
hated that thing.
Watch Xavier. Like the title is hidden under a cloth. The hemp title's on top of it, and like Biggie picks it up, shakes his head. And Xavier's just sobbing as he lifts up the other one.
Byron's
it was one of the
crying.
points I made leading up is that how do they do this title change and Kofi's got to celebrate with that stupid looking title, and they thought of that. So credit to them, because I think that the visual is such a big thing. And going back in this historical moment, and he's holding up a thing with the recycling sign on it, would have looked so silly. So I was glad they thought 2 steps ahead.
It was also about... Sorry. No, it's okay. It was about 2 hours into a fucking 9-hour show.
And a very underwhelming show up until that point, I thought.
And I think everyone... you and I both said recently, Braden, got my money's worth. I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine with what I spent making the trip. I saw Kofi win. They can do whatever. I could have Baron Corbin for the next 4 hours. I'm happy. Kofi Kingston won the title, and that was an amazing moment.
Do you think the moment would have felt as good if it took place at the end of the night? If it was the actual
people would have been tired.
I think they would have run that risk. That being that last spot at WrestleMania, very tough.
I think it would have telegraphed the finish as well. Usually you get a babyface win at the end of WrestleMania.
And what's the endearing moment of that WrestleMania? I would say it's the Kofi win and not Becky's win.
Yeah.
I had a few notables here because I thought we were all going to go this direction. I just wanted to mention just the spectacle of ROH and New Japan at Madison Square Garden that night. That was an incredible atmosphere. Sure. Liger coming out, Muta coming out, and that crowd was so electric at the start. Jon Moxley showing up at Double or Nothing. I think that was like a really big debut for the company that really set them with a lot of momentum. One of my favorites of the year was David Starr and Jordan Devlin brawling as Pat Benatar is playing, and this place is going absolutely insane. But I did go with the Kofi moment, and a personal story that I have attached to this was being at WrestleMania in 2013 at MetLife Stadium, the same stadium, and I'm going in the media area to the washroom, and Kofi's in the washroom at the same time, and a kid comes in and notices it's Kofi Kingston and goes up to him and says, "Who are you wrestling tonight?" And Kofi just looks at him and he says, "Not this year, not this year," because he's not booked on the show. He was on the pre-show as an analyst, and there we are 6 years later in the same stadium, and he wins the WWE title, and that is something I would not have imagined would have happened in that bathroom 6 years later, as Kofi is not even booked to wrestle on the show. Wow. So that was my moment of 2019 as we all go in the same direction. Hopefully there's much more disagreement over the rest of this show.
SOS.
So next up is best interview on a media outlet. Last year, Davey, you chose Kenny Omega on Talk is Jericho. Braden, you just picked John Cena. You did not specify where, when, or how, but just John Cena.
Because any show he shows up on, he's amazing.
I guess he did a great job as well. Wai and I also agreed with Davey. Kenny Omega on Talk is Jericho. I would assume this was the one where they're breaking down their match from Wrestle Kingdom and kind of going through it. That, I guess, got some criticism from people, but to me was, like, it's 2018 at this point, that, you know, a really cool behind the scenes look at the match that was very pivotal for both of their careers. Davey, where are you going for best interview?
I'm going back to Talk is Jericho. I'm going to the John Moxley interview with Jericho. I know Mox did one or two more interviews after this, but
this was the big one.
This was the big one. And there's something about Jericho who he would have been in that locker room with Moxley for such a long time. He's been there. He's been in WCW when he was being offered big money to stay there, and was like, no, this is killing me creatively, and I need to go somewhere where I feel I might be appreciated. And he left all those years ago to WWE. And the same thing kind of happened with Mox this year, where he left, and amazingly, WWE did this huge farewell tour, not thinking he might just jump ship and do New Japan and AEW and all that. And it was just fascinating to hear all the behind the scenes, because we see the shit that goes out there. I listen to you guys and hear about you reviewing, okay, so Dean Ambrose is back. He's got this cool new look. He's got a bit of fur on his jacket. He's cut his hair, and he's wearing a gas mask and getting vaccinations in his arse on TV. What? Why is that a thing? Why is that happening? And to hear him talk about how he fought it, and enough was enough, and he moved on. It was really fascinating.
I think it confirmed a lot of things as well. To hear somebody in that position from their firsthand account as well, I think it just did so much to take you into that world and confirm a lot of what you hear so much about. So, and
it's a top guy as well. It's not like, so EC3 has had a terrible run on the main roster. It wouldn't have the same impact if it's EC3 finally goes on Talk is Jericho and talks about these things. This is a former WWE champion, one of the hottest new products of the last 10 years they created with the Shield. Like, you would have thought he's there for life. Like, those three guys in the Shield, they're lifers. And he wasn't.
And went out and stepped up too. It wasn't like this guy who just complained about being shackled and, okay, go out and prove it. And the guy did it. And from the first night that Best of the Super Juniors finals, you saw, wow, this is a totally different guy. And, you know, the proof was in the pudding. Yeah. Like, if this guy had gone out and just couldn't hang with everybody, it would have been like, okay, maybe this guy was just complaining way too much. And it was, but no, he went out and I think confirmed a lot of the criticisms that he made vocal. That was also my choice of John Moxley on Talk is Jericho. I also really enjoyed Kevin Owens' interview with Lillian Garcia. Just a guy who's very, very honest about himself, his own self-doubt, his just issues that he deals with, not, being very unhappy, not being able to enjoy his Universal title run. I thought, again, a really interesting look inside the headspace of somebody in a very high-pressure situation. Wai, your choice for best interview.
I'm expecting a clean sweep for this one. I also went Moxley on Talk is Jericho. This was an interview that I feel like the repercussions we kind of felt for weeks, in an effect similar to something like the pipe bomb. And, of course, beyond all the great points that you guys have already raised up, it gave us a new Vinceism in it's such good shit, which I love.
We'll get a lot of, I guess, a good companion to this, as well as Wade Keller's interview with Moxley that came around, within a week of this one as well. Braden, are you making it a clean sweep?
Yes, I am, because this one is the biggest thing since the CM Punk podcast that came out when he left the WWE. So this one's very similar. You all kind of just touched on all of those things, but I love how he explains that he hires his friend to make these videos. He comes up with his own plan. Going forward, we're recording this at the end of the year. You know how many people are indie wrestlers doing what he's done with going out and getting independent videos and literally stealing? It's not saying he created that, but going with that formula because it worked. But yeah, he gave out so much things about the business that we all thought we knew, but then he kind of brings it even more into light. And I'm never a big Dean Ambrose guy, but I love Jon Moxley now, so I really like that. And I don't really listen to interviews that much. I don't really. I like to read when John posts them and puts them in little quotes and stuff. But I had to check this one out, and it was great.
Okay, next category is best podcast. We're not being incestuous here, so non-post wrestling podcasts that we will give out to. Last year, Davey, you chose Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, Braden Herrington, Sunday Night's Main Event, and Wai and I chose Wrestling Observer Radio. Wai, where are you going for best podcast not attached to our fine network?
I'm sticking with Talk is Jericho and going with that particular show. Beyond, I think, the Jon Moxley interview that everybody has heard, I think we've, at least for personally, listening to a lot of different podcasts, I feel like Jericho has some of the high points in terms of his guests. Great access, of course. Some of my favorites was his podcast talking about his own signing with AEW at the beginning of this year. A great interview with people like the likes of Jay White. So I think, not only is it a good vehicle to hear the insights of a lot of performers in the industry that you wouldn't normally be able to hear, but I think he also takes you pretty deeply into his own, inner workings of his own career as well.
Okay, Braden.
Well, I'm not picking the same one I picked last year, so I'm gonna pick. I do like the Jericho podcast because he's so all over the place. He has people that aren't wrestling, and he's not kind of scared. He kind of sticks by his guns, whether you like who he has on or not. But I do like that. But I have to. There's a podcast that kind of started this past year, and I have to throw some love towards the PWT cast because everyone over at Pro Wrestling Tees. Those guys are awesome. So Scrump with the PWT cast has had some very strange interview with Jay and Silent Bob and all these other people. So go check that out because I always support the homies.
Okay, I went with...
Is this just the category for Braden? The shout out?
Shout out to my friends and former friends on the podcast.
Oh, no.
My choice, I stayed with the Wrestling Observer family of podcasts, but I went with the Pacific Rim podcast with Fumi Saito and Jim Valley. For those that are not familiar, Fumi Saito has been a reporter in Japan for decades covering the scene. His knowledge of that part of the world is unparalleled. He's a tremendous resource that has been covering this for decades at this point, and now has a podcast that he does regularly with Jim Valley. There's a lot that can be learned there. I would also add, just in terms of the research that goes into it and the work that is so obvious that goes into these marathon shows that these guys do on a weekly basis. Chris Zellner and David Bixenspan with Between the Sheets. These guys put out 5 to 6 hour shows weekly, and it's just an unbelievable amount of research and notes that they prepare going into this and just dissecting a week of wrestling history as well, which is a really fascinating deep dive that they do weekly. So my official pick was the Pacific Rim podcast, and Davey, your choice.
I was slightly incestuous here. I picked the Grapple Spotlight with our very own Richard Benson, JP and Joe, there's something, being a Brit living in Canada, I feel I've integrated myself pretty well here. I feel like this is my home as well.
Is this how you caught up on Brexit?
kind of. But it's occasionally, like, Braden was over, I put on Big Fat Quiz of the Year yesterday.
Yeah.
And those kind of panel shows, like Mock the Week and all that, I will put on every now and then when I need a top up of British culture. And listening to those guys every week, I get that. I get my my wrestling opinions, and they break down pretty much everything. I think their chemistry is amazing. But to hear them talk in depth about how Brit Res is dead, and they're going about how shit the latest Progress card was, and it's Ginny versus Tony Storm again. And then, by the way, did you know Supermarket Sweep is back? That had me howling with laughter at work as I was setting up the other week. Just talking about roast dinners and Mark Fowler from EastEnders and all that. It keeps me in touch with home. I really love listening to those three. I think they're super knowledgeable. And also, fuck the Tories.
It's a tremendous show, so I recommend all of these shows as well. We now shift over to best social media account. Last year, I went with Game Changer Wrestling. Wai and Davey chose Becky Lynch, and Braden Tommaso Ciampa. I will start off this one, and I am choosing RJ City. I think that he's just has mastered the art of Twitter. He got the rare follow from the Post Wrestling Twitter account. So I think that alone is a huge achievement, and just somebody that I think what really marks it is that you can read a tweet and know it's from him instantly. Just no wasted tweets either. Just operating on an island to me of the wrestlers that are out there. So RJ City is my choice. Davey.
Nothing warms my cold dead heart more than when my mum calls me to tell me that her friend asked her why the wrestling news sites are reporting that I walk in on people taking dumps.
I do not read that Twitter account any longer without hearing Davey yelling at me as I read it. And that was on my short list here.
Only Lorcan, my God. Like you said, RJ City, you can read it and know it's him.
You're right. This guy.
You really know it's Only Lorcan before you've even read who said it.
He's on an island that you don't need to call. You can just hear him.
Yeah, it's just funny. It's really funny. He's just shouting nonsensical things about times he had too many chocolate martinis or Tia Marias or whatever.
I like when he tells us he wakes up in random places, or he walks in, like he said, walks in on someone taking a shit.
I love when he tweets the regretful tweets where he's like, I was drunk last night and tweeted a lot in my shouty voice, and the next day he's saying, like, too many chocolate martinis. It's just funny. It's like, really funny, and I'm so glad he's re-signed with WWE. I know there was that whole thing where he was wanting to leave, but I love watching him. I think him and Danny Burch, unfortunately, I can't see them going much higher, but to have like killer tag matches a few times a year on TV with the likes of like Imperium and those guys, I love watching them. They're so good. Only Lorcan's awesome.
From Davey, we go to, selfishly, one of my favorite Twitter follows, at Way0937. Another guy, very precise, and
goodness.
I mean, you're cerebral with your tweets. You don't tweet just LOLs, you know what I mean? You have measured thoughts, and I always find you always have like a very good Twitter tone, Way.
Well, thank you so much. I will jump on your choice and agree with you. RJ City is my favorite Twitter follow. I think, man, in a year where I think Twitter is such a topic of a conversation in professional wrestling, I feel like 90% of it I could really do without. And I would say the 10% that I would keep at the very top is RJ City. Just somebody who not only is, you know, of course, a comedian, you know, a very great performer as well. At this point, I'm willing to bet that more people know about his Twitter than his actual wrestling itself. So, not to say anything, you know, that has, I really hope that the two of them can really like he really deserves to be more viewed, is what I'm trying to say. So book this guy, and if not, just at least book him for your Twitter and let him control your Twitter.
Yes, or send him a B. Arthur quote.
Yeah, I thought his Twitter was just a Golden Girls like fan account.
That's what makes it great.
No, the man has many layers. Braden.
I also picked Oni Lorcan simply because I can just you feeling down, scroll through his Twitter feed and just look at all the things he's yelling and talking about his dad and llamas, I think, at one
and his
point.
dog.
Yeah, he's just really, he wrestles like he tweets, which isn't like, maybe more wrestlers should do that. You should trigger fingers turn to Twitter fingers. And if you yell in your Twitter, well, then you should be hitting running European uppercuts in Smash Mouth style. Fits your style, Twitter.
Next category is Most Improved Performer. We're going to circle back to Braden.
This one was a tough one.
Oh, wait, last week. Last week.
yeah.
So let's go through those first. Braden, you chose Cody Rhodes. Davie and Wai chose Becky Lynch, and I chose Hangman Page. Back to you, Braden.
It's interesting that I picked Cody Rhodes last year because I had two people in mind this year that really don't really fit in the most improved. So I have to give a shout out Rey Mysterio because for a few years there, I thought he was done. But by the magic of
stem cell treatment.
Science or whatever it is, I don't know if that counts. So if that doesn't count, then I do really want to pick Rey Mysterio because this year was pretty crazy for him.
As a promo. Like, this guy was one of the better promos this year.
I know. Like, everything he did this year, I was like, ooh, I'm kind of sold. But I do want to say Cody Rhodes because every time...
Can you improve twice in 2 years in a row?
Yeah, I think you can, but fine. I'll just stay with Rey because it's Rey. I'll stay with Rey Mysterio because even before the Brock Lesnar thing, he had this match, and I think it was even in January, where, we're recording this, he's had a ton of matches with Andrade, but there was this one that was on a SmackDown.
Yes.
That was like, I don't know, 5 stars in my opinion, just crazy. And I watched that, and I had to rub my eyes, being like, this is not the same guy I've been watching for the past 10 years. So, stem cells. Rey Mysterio, most improved.
And now that SmackDown's on Friday nights, that's also a night you're usually rubbing your eyes.
Yeah, usually, for other reasons.
Wai, your most improved performer this year.
I'm going to go... I had a number of options, and they were all from New Japan Pro Wrestling. I had a number to choose from, and I won't really reveal them in case any of you guys choose them. But my top choice among all the picks that I had was Jon Moxley. This guy started off the year... I think in the clear running for I would say worst of if the career kind of continue the way that it has. But ever since he left,
he was teasing stuff with Nia Jax at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. But I think most of us expected him to do pretty well once he got out of that system. I don't know if anybody of us expected him to do as well as he has, in particular with his matches in New Japan Pro Wrestling against Juice Robinson. Great showing in the G1. I would say for me a highlight of many of the matches in G1. Of course, a lot of people talking about the Ishii match as even a match of the year contender,
and pulled down by that staph infection that he worked half the tournament with as well.
Just the change in demeanor, in-ring style was such a pleasant surprise from, I think, the very tired Dean Ambrose matches that we've been seeing throughout his WWE career. So I would pick him as most improved.
Yeah, he was on my list as well. It just seemed to... I went with Lance Archer because to me, it's just what a change in this guy. And, I saw it years back when he had a fantastic G1. I believe it was 2014. But he had really settled into that tag team role. He was getting up there in age. And then this year, Davey Boy Smith Jr. leaves New Japan and he's in a position... not all that different from when Carl Anderson was teaming with Giant Bernard, Matt Bloom, and Matt Bloom went back to WWE. What was going to happen to this guy as a singles? And he stepped up and totally got into fantastic shape for that G1, had a tremendous tournament, and then through a series of circumstances ends up as U.S. champion at King of Pro Wrestling. But updated his look, updated like his big man spots that he was doing, and having a lot of fun matches throughout that G1, which is not the easiest tournament to stand out in with the level, the high bar that is set. You could see how seriously he took it. So I thought, like, this guy set himself up for a great position in New Japan for the year ahead and maybe beyond. Davey.
Now I'm worried here. I agree with all of them. I apologize in advance, Braden, if we lose subscribers here for my pick.
Don't even
because
say
I know I like The Last Jedi, and I might get some hate here, but my most improved performer of the year is Baron Corbin.
Cut the show. Cut the feed. I'm done.
I genuinely think, wrestling-wise, he's improved a hell of a lot. The kind of King of the Ring tournament, I thought he actually put on some decent matches. But here's my main thing. I would argue he's the best heel in wrestling today. I think wrestling's evolved so much, and it's the cool heel now. You watch that, we talked about it yesterday on our Best Of show. You watch Gargano versus Cole, and Cole comes out as the heel, and the whole of Barclays Center is cheering him. That's kind of the thing now. You cheer the heels because they're cool. Baron Corbin is the only one who, when he comes out, he gets legitimate heat. He is the guy that's getting Roman Reigns, of all people, cheers. And I think you've got to credit the guy for that, because I think he's actually kind of good in his role of playing just a dick heel. And you look at him and you just don't like him. And I think you've got to give the guy some credit there, because back in the day, people would try and like fucking murder heels in Puerto Rico and stuff like that because they hated him so much. There'd be like knives through the barricades and stuff and all that kind of stuff. And it's now 2019 and we're like, oh yeah, Undisputed Era is so cool, but they're the bad guys. It's the kind of NWO heel cool thing. I think he's upped his game wrestling wise. I wouldn't say, like, don't get me wrong, I don't particularly want to watch Baron Corbin matches, but I think he's an interesting character in this world of wrestling we have now.
But to that point, you don't want to watch Baron Corbin matches. That's the line you have to straddle. That is he an effective heel in the sense that he's headlining a pay-per-view? Is that going to entice you to watch or not watch? And I think that's the line with Baron Corbin.
I think it's with like the whole Santa Claus isn't real anymore. We know that. So we have
children of all ages listening to this, Davey, and you are now more hated than Baron Corbin.
It's now, we look so much more at match quality, like wrestling ability-wise, because we know it's not real. So it's like, okay, so entertain me. Whereas I think a Baron Corbin could have been like really good in the 80s or something.
I think his heat though is more not we boo you because you're an effective heel, but we boo you because we don't want to see you.
But isn't that what heat was with a heel like 20 years ago? I hate you. I fucking hate you, and I want Hulk Hogan to win because I hate this guy so much.
Can you compare Baron Corbin heat to like Ciampa heat when he was like killing Gargano? I just don't think that's the same thing.
He was one of the best heels, and I don't know, was he my... Like, oh no, we don't have heel of the year. Yeah. But he would have been my heel of the year last year. But again, even with him,
I think there's certainly a spot for Baron Corbin. He wouldn't be my top heel on a show
ever.
But has he been effective being opposite Roman Reigns? I think he has been in a role. I think the key to Baron Corbin is not overusing the guy, because there is a turnoff factor with him that today's fans, they are exposed to a lot of great wrestling, and that's an audience that you do have to satisfy. And there's a big difference from Daniel Bryan as a heel versus Baron Corbin as a heel versus Kevin Owens as a heel when he had that heel run. So that's all. Certainly, I wouldn't go by certainly just the crowd reaction. I think you also have to look at, is this guy good for our business? Is this guy effective in that top role? He wouldn't be my top guy, but he certainly, to me, has a role there because of the factors that you did outline. So there we go. A great pick, Davey, to generate.
He did
discussion.
get a cool outfit. That's most improved. I mean, Park would disagree on that.
Get out of here. We're not going to go
the G Unit vest.
Like
no.
The
his
coat,
crown,
the crown and the coat.
You like that?
His Game of Thrones
that's
swag.
That is like I think he can rock it.
No,
I hate him.
No, I won't go so far.
I don't get why he's got hobo
Patreon
tattooed behind his ear
down.
though. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, he sucks.
Did we get everyone's choices? Okay.
Yes.
Angle of the year is next. Last year, Braden and Davey chose Aleister Black's parking lot attack. This was back when he liked to get fresh air and get outside.
No, this was really good. Now that you go watch this back.
Yeah, now he's in a room without windows.
Yeah.
Wai Ting's was The Bullet Club is Fine. And mine, Ghetto attacking Kazuchika Okada and turning on him, joining Jay White. So this year, Angle of the Year, I will start things off for this one. I know what everyone is going to say in response to this, but my definition of an angle is the actual execution of the moment. It is not necessarily the payoff. I would cite the Invasion story, where we go back that night when the physical wall of ECW and WCW turning on Jericho and Kane. Phenomenal angle. Storyline was god-awful. So this one, I am choosing Katsuyori Shibata attacking Kenta. Are we going to get a payoff to it? Probably not. Maybe we do. But that moment was phenomenal. Place went insane. It was totally unexpected. And I think it was slow for Kenta. And that to me was the turning point for Kenta where, okay, this guy has found himself in New Japan, this new identity, because he was hated in this moment with Katsuyori Shibata getting physical with Kenta. So that was my choice. Wei.
I went with the same one. It's when you think of the angle of the year, or perhaps even just you think about the most shocking things that you might have seen, things you didn't really see coming, and I would certainly classify this one, even though I read spoilers ahead of time, so I didn't see it coming. But it was that good, where the visual of it, I think, seeing this man who was thought to have been
taken down
at one point, nearly certainly retired, if not even worse off than that. Coming back and actually executing the moves that he did on Kenta just made you so full of joy and so full of excitement about what was to come. Unfortunately, I mean, I'd love to know exactly what was going on through their minds as they were going through that, if he wasn't actually cleared to return. Why do as much as you did? I don't know if we'll necessarily know in the near future. However, I'm really grateful that we at least got the moment.
Even if you don't get the match, and I'm not even advocating to see Shibata wrestle again, I'd feel uneasy about that. That visual, you can't say it was wasted because Kenta, I think, got a lot out of it. Sitting on top of Shibata, that closing scene was tremendous. Davey, your angle of the year.
My angle of the year is another turn. And it's in our wheelhouse, NXT, and it's the Finn Balor turn. So Finn went to NXT from Raw, and he's been someone that I haven't been too hot on since. His entrances have been cool, even in NXT. He never really blew me away, and as soon as that turn happened, I was like, okay. And it wasn't just the fact that he turned heel, it was the aggression he did it with. I think the kind of overhead kick, the Pele kick to Johnny Gargano, it looked way cooler than, say, Seth turning on the Shield, where you see him raising the chair and you're like, oh, this is going to happen. It came out of nowhere. He's kicking a guy who stood behind him. The drop kick through the barricade, the Bloody Sunday on the ramp, the aggression there was crazy. I mean, I think it legit injured Gargano for a while and took him out. But I didn't see it coming. It shocked me. We saw ourselves firsthand a spike of interest in our podcast that week from Finn Balor turning.
He drew money for you guys.
He drew money.
Heel turns draw money, yeah. I was going to pick that one as well because that turn is really interesting. This guy was pretty popular in NXT. He kind of did make that NXT. The storyline is I made NXT and now it's more popular and I did it. It's the angle itself is really it's definitely one of my favorites.
Both of us shouted out loud when it happened.
Yeah, it was,
which rarely happens with angles. Matches can do it. Crazy matches, we'll be screaming and stuff, but an actual angle, we're kind of over so much of it, especially in WWE, whereas both of us went, what? Really?
Yeah. I'm going to pick, I had to say that, but I'm going to pick something just separate just to mention. John, you said that it's never the match that it's really setting up, it's just the angle. Well, there was an angle after a match where a brother asked another brother saying, I don't need a friend. I need a brother. And that was awesome.
Thank God he didn't deliver it like that.
No, I messed it up because brother. Oh, brother. Yeah, I really like that setup. That whole match itself is fantastic. From start to end, it feels like a movie. Not the best wrestling, but I'm talking about the angle after the match. I can't remember the match that they talked about. It's them versus the Bucks, Cody and Dustin at Fighter Fest or Fight for the Fallen.
Or double or nothing?
No, the angle was a double or nothing. Yeah. They set up, I think it was the Fighter Fest match.
So I feel like that angle is what everyone kind of remembers from that. People quote that in wrestling all the time now. It's ingrained in history of wrestling quotes that people say to other people. When you're fighting, you'll sometimes quote the Shawn Michaels, "I'm sorry, I love you." But now with your boys, you're going to be like, "I don't need a partner. I need my older brother." So I think that angle was fantastic.
It was Fight for the Fallen.
Yeah,
your main event.
Well, the match itself was not up to par of the angle.
All right, next is Best Celebrity Involvement. And last year, what celebrities graced our screens? We had Davey and Braden going with Stephen Amell at All In. Wai and I chose Wheatus performing at Joey Janela's Lost in New York, which I will say there was no celebrity involvement that hit 2018 levels with Wheatus. Tremendous involvement by that band. Wai, why don't you start us off?
This year I had a tough time picking this one, actually, and I'm kind of glad for that, because it tells me that we're kind of past the era of just celebrity cameos for the sake of celebrity cameos, and I think any celebrity who dares attach their name to professional wrestling is at least educated a little bit more about what to expect, to the point where they're not necessarily there just to embarrass themselves if they choose to be attached to it at all. So I actually had a bit of a tough time even picking my best or worst this year. But I don't know if this will qualify, but I think this was the closest thing I had to it. It was Last Week Tonight with John Oliver's coverage of WWE. And I classify this because he's a celebrity.
That's very good. That's a good choice.
And, it would just, I think the fact that a show as good as this one, as well researched as the team at Last Week Tonight, obviously this was somewhat following the coverage that they gave the WWE in the lead up to Crown Jewel from last year. But this was an entire episode dedicated to their own, I guess, questionable policies of, what do they call it? The non-contracted, what is it? What is the proper term for
independent contractors?
Independent contractors, and the whole system that I think definitely maybe leaves a little bit to be desired. The lasting effects of a show like this, you can definitely question. Nobody ever went to WrestleMania holding up signs, or at least not to my knowledge. There was no big uproar about it after the fact.
So you brought up a lot of big points, and it wasn't the show's responsibility to run with that, and look what was done afterwards. I mean, that tells you in a nutshell kind of the nature of the industry, that very few are going to speak out about this stuff. And that's why I think a guy like a David Starr has received a lot more criticism than he has acclaim, from inside the industry.
And I think, even if WWE doesn't necessarily do something about it, the fact that it's a talking point now, and that the fact that you could present this 30-minute thing to somebody who knows nothing about it to say, hey, this is what we mean, this is something that needs to be addressed, it gives a wake-up call out to AEW, to any other promotion out there that is thinking about doing professional wrestling on a large scale. So that's my favorite celebrity involvement.
Well, mine is not going to be as deep as that.
How am I supposed to pick something after that?
My runner-up was Jay and Silent Bob on Dynamite.
Yes.
Oh,
well, that's not mine, but that's a good runner-up.
I thought Kevin Smith's reactions were tremendous, and maybe I'm kind of... If Wai can get away with John Oliver, I can get away with this one, and that was at Triple Mania, Cain Velasquez's debut in the Trios match, teaming with Cody and Psycho Clown against Tejano Jr., Black Taurus, and Killer Cross. And he came in, and I didn't know what to expect from Cain Velasquez. We knew he was a major fan and obviously would put the work in, but still, to me, it greatly exceeded expectations. And I'm going to pause on Cain Velasquez, and maybe we'll revisit Chapter 2 next week.
Interesting. Maybe there was stem cells involved, and he was doing lucha stuff when
he was tremendous doing lucha stuff, and not so much.
It's lucha things.
Lucha things.
Yeah.
Are stem cells your tag team of the year?
No.
It might be best non-wrestler or something like that. Best gimmick. Davey, your choice for best celebrity involvement.
I feel mine could be people's worst. But just from the reaction of it, I'm going to go with Tyson Fury. And that's because people know me, as I'm sure they know you guys, that's the wrestling guy. That's the guy who likes wrestling. And I work in a bar, and people will try to engage with you about it, and they won't know much about it. Now, I don't know much about boxing. That's kind of a huge world with so many people following it, and I don't really know much about it. So many people were going to me, what Tyson Fury's in WWE, especially him being a Brit. I had a lot of my mates going, hey, David, texting me, I saw Tyson Fury is in WWE with this Braun Strowman guy. That guy looks big. Who's he? What's his story? And that's exactly what WWE want. And that's exactly what a celebrity angle should do, is attract lapsed fans or casual viewers or complete non-viewers, people interested in other stuff, to the product. I thought the whole brawl angle was actually pretty good. It was no Mike Tyson Austin, but it wasn't terrible. Match itself, whatever. But I think in achieving something and getting more eyes on the product and people talking about it, Tyson Fury.
Yeah, and all those fans got together like, you guys want to watch this? Yeah, we're all coming to my place Thursday at 2 p.m. to watch this.
But even if it's for WWE, even if it's YouTube views of that brawl or whatever, I think they gain something. Not necessarily network subscriptions, but people are talking about it, and that's what they want.
Braden.
Well, mine doesn't match any of those.
I like how we all went different paths.
Yeah, mine is a different path. I went to WrestleMania this year, and I was super excited that I got to go watch WrestleMania live. But then I was told that a wrestler was going to be sang out to the ring by Joan freaking Jett, and I was very excited. Like I was like, wait, I'm already going to this, and now I get to see Joan Jett. Fuck yeah. It's Ronda Rousey's theme song. Ronda Rousey's theme song is the same theme song from Freaks and Geeks. Love that song. And she still has a great voice. So now I can tell people I saw Joan Jett, and I thought that was really cool.
I want to jump in on that as well. Like, talking of non-wrestling fans, that song comes on at the bar sometimes. Sure, yeah. Bad reputation. And I go, I've seen Joan Jett. And they're like, yeah. And I'll show a picture of Ronda Rousey walking to the ring with her, like, Roddy Piper font saying Joan Jett, Ronda Rousey. I'm like, yeah, look. And they're like, wait, you saw Ronda Rousey and Joan
that's
Jett?
my new favorite thing in conversation.
At WrestleMania, they're like, what?
Legit. Like, I grew up listening to that kind of music. I grew up listening to punk and rock and oldie stuff. And to see her, I don't know, bring out a wrestler. In a woman who did so much for rock and roll as a woman, for now a woman who did so much for, like, combat sports, essentially, and now here in the main event, first time ever. I thought it was really cool, so I really liked that a lot.
I thought it was a lost opportunity. UFC never did that.
Yeah.
That was a great opportunity for them to get Joan Jett there, and WWE capitalized on it.
Yeah, lit.
Best piece of merchandise. Last year, Davey, you chose Kairi Sane's pirate hat.
You still didn't get one. I should have picked up on that for Christmas this year. Damn.
Braden chose a custom Chaos Chicago style shirt.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, my Chaos.
Yeah,
shirt,
you wear that. Yeah.
Wei, you chose the Villain Club Gold Edition shirt, and I selected Bad Luck Fale's Fuck 'em shirt.
I feel like I suggested this category last year. I don't know if I'm always interested in the results of this, because I have no idea where anybody is going.
Well, merchandise encapsulates so much, so
I didn't even know where I was going for this one. But of all the things I had to choose, I think it's notable that the departure of the Bullet Club guys certainly has, like, made the pro wrestling tees perhaps top 10 or top however whatever a little bit more wide open this year. Although from what Scrump tells us, Marty Scurll, despite not being a part of AEW and maybe I would say less visible than he was in previous years, still one of the top sellers. So that's really
he comes out with shirts though, like, every day. Like, Marty Scurll has new, like, creations of shirts, so he's killing it, yeah.
Sure, so, but, I have to think about, am I going to pick another black t-shirt? I don't know. Instead, I went with Tai Chi's tearaway pants.
Oh.
Now on sale right now.
You can buy those
from New Japan Pro Wrestling. And you would know this because there's a video of Chris Charlton doing the tearaway on Twitter. So that was my pick.
Davey?
I'm going to go with the little bit of the bubbly t-shirt. More so just from the phrase, which...
Not the actual bubbly itself.
I've not tried it. I can't imagine it's good.
That's my pick. I went with the actual sparkling wine.
I tried to order it. They don't ship to Canada.
Yeah. I just think the idea that a wrestler is pimping out literal champagne is awesome.
I told Braden the other day, that's he teamed up with Stephen Amell. It's from Stephen Amell's Vineyards, and he's like, what? But yeah, just the t-shirt. I believe Pro Wrestling Tees went down.
Yeah.
When it went on sale. The phrase I've shown non-wrestling friends, and they've started quoting
it's getting over
as well.
It gets over.
Like, I'll go to a friend's bar and they'll be like, David, you having a little bit of the bubbly? And it's got over completely.
I just love
the shirt isn't great, but the fact that so many people love that slogan so much that they buy anything with it on, I think makes it the best merchandise of the year.
I just love the fact that it went from just this throwaway line that wasn't even on the pay-per-view. It was like on the after show, and you just suddenly got all these memes from it, and they just ran with it. And the guys made all this merchandise out of it and sold countless bottles of this stuff. And just the idea that wrestling fans are shutting down a site to order champagne is just comical, does not do it justice. But I picked the actual champagne.
I had the shirt because the shirt definitely like changed a lot of things. People were like, look how fast something happens in WWE. And then you have to wait so long for like a Suplex City shirt because it's WWE. They go through all that stuff. But the bubbly shirt was like, someone designed it so quickly, so fast, just like you designed a little bit of the Foley. Yes. And it's crazy.
Foily.
Oh, Foily. Yeah. Can I pick that one?
Sure you can.
I actually I'm going to agree with John though. It's the actual physical like champagne, or maybe not champagne, but the sparkling wine, the bubbly. Like, how fucking funny is that? That this guy says it and he becomes something that he's probably made some sort of money off of it. Enough that he's like, wow, this is ridiculous. Because a few other wrestlers have like, I think is it Carmella who has her own wine, or Cody with his own wine? Yeah, there's a few.
Cody has cigars, I think.
Yeah, like
Kazarian.
Yeah.
There's a few wrestlers that like do that and stuff. And sure, your probably instant thought is none of this is going to be very good unless like you know your stuff. But like it's the novelty. So of course you're gonna want to buy the bubbly from Chris Jericho because it's his. So.
I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but we haven't been plugging Wine Wednesdays. For nothing.
We haven't. Yeah, we have. On Wednesday nights we do our Wine Wednesdays. We need to try some more wrestler wine. But
shout out to Boozer who just gives it to us for free.
Yeah, sometimes. They should ship it to Canada though because we want a little bit of the bubbly.
And Jericho's Canadian.
Yeah. Also, they did miss a thing, though. He was in Champaign on an episode.
Yes,
the week after. And they should have done a bit with that where he's not allowed to call it Champagne because it's not from Champaign. But now he's in Champaign, Illinois. Like, that was a mark I think they missed. But, yeah.
Worst promotional tactic is next week. Best theme music. This can encompass anything that was musically connected to pro wrestling this year. Wai, as one of the aficionados at this table, what caught your ear this year?
Of the new songs I feel like introduced in pro wrestling this year, I have to say I pay less and less attention to like pay-per-view themes, you know.
They toned it down. Even WrestleMania, no one really can tell you what the theme was because they heard you guys bitch about Greenlight all the time, so they finally stopped playing those videos with all those things, yeah.
But for me, I think NXT continues to deliver a great amount of like wonderful theme songs that continue to catch my eye. And my favorite amongst the new ones that were introduced this year was Mia Yim's theme song. I believe it's called Number One, but people might know it just for
she got Nelly
as HBIC.
Oh,
what? Nelly? What do you mean?
No
Number One.
Nelly songs.
No, I don't believe Nelly's a part of this. But whoever is a part of it, great jobs. Is this CFOs? I'm almost afraid to say because like I don't even know exactly who.
They have a but yeah they go
something else.
They do different stuff.
Anyway, as the kids say, this one's a bop.
Wow.
I failed to mention that last year Wai's pick was Wrestle and Flow's Gorillas of Destiny theme. I went with Dvorak Symphony No. 9/4, which is Walter's theme, which I got to experience live this year during SummerSlam week, which was the coolest entrance I saw this year. Braden, All In by Downstate.
Oh, yeah. Can I pick that again?
Davie chose Blood Water by Grandson, which was the theme for NXT TakeOver of Brooklyn. Davie, were you going with a TakeOver theme this year or something different?
I'm not, although I think Poppy has killed it with NXT. Like, her connection with the Io Shirai is super interesting. They've been doing, like, magazine interviews and stuff, and obviously had the entrance on NXT TV. I think it's only a matter of time before we see Poppy play out Io at a TakeOver.
Don Cherry's favorite group this year.
Yes. I went with Bray Wyatt's new version, that like the Fiend theme by Code Orange. I already liked his original version. This one was so much cooler, and to be there at SummerSlam, I mean, I would suggest maybe next year Entrance of the Year, because I think there are so many cool entrances in wrestling. It's such a huge part of wrestling, and where the character's gone from there is another thing. But that version of the song, people were waiting for it to come out. It was on Spotify. I heard Braden play it on repeat like that first week. It's really cool. They add so much more layers to it. And I think Code Orange are like a really good band for wrestling. They sound like a cool wrestling band, like the old, like the 90s, early 2000s, like rock kind of wrestling shit.
No, that theme is lit. I'll jump in. Yeah, I did choose the Bray Wyatt theme as well. That's not necessarily, I'm wearing a Black Craft hat, but that's not necessarily my go-to type of music. But that was so cool. We already knew the old version of it. We knew the character was coming, and then I was at that SummerSlam as well, and the entrance was amazing. You know, we'll talk about Bray Wyatt next week, I'm sure. But the theme was awesome. We should be doing like an entrance, but it's still it counts as the same thing. But noteworthy and shout outs to not the Poppy, but the Io Shirai's theme. That's like the 808 bass kind of boo 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 boo. That stuff is super lit. They need to put lyric. Poppy needs to jump on that instrumental. That's probably why they haven't released it yet. But it's only weird because he's come out to it maybe more than just this year, but also like coming out to your own band music is badass. And What Have I Become? Fozzy, Judas, that's lit, man.
Every week when we're watching AEW,
we go nuts.
We'll not be talking, and then when the chorus drops, we both at the same time, what have I become?
It's so good.
Catchy.
I have gone to my local karaoke DJ, and I'm like, hey, man, I have noticed that you don't have Fozzy in your list.
I happen to have it on my Spotify list.
And he said he's looking into it. So I know it's a karaoke file. Fozzy Judas is somewhere. So, yeah, like, shout out that, because I was at the Tokyo Dome when he came out to that versus Omega, and everyone was like, that's fucking funny. He's coming out to a song that was currently on the Billboard, and now he's in AEW and he's allowed to use it. And I think that's really cool.
And also this character of Jericho, of course he'd sing himself to the ring. It makes sense. It's him.
I'll become. Come on. Everyone loves that song. Way.
I am not a big theme song person. Like, if you were to ask me, what is your favorite theme? I would probably tell you nothing. But one that I genuinely liked this year, and he had to get a whole new theme going to AEW, was Kenny Omega's Battle Cry by this guy, Little V. And I think it's like a really cool theme.
Oh, it's lit.
When it hits, the crowd goes nuts for him. They shot like a video for him. And I just think it's like, to me, the theme is what it associates with the performer and the reaction that it generates. I think no matter what Kenny Omega comes out, it's always like a superstar reaction this year. And I thought, you go from such a theme that you're synonymous with, and you have to make that switch. That can often be very difficult. I think Tanahashi suffered from that. I think when he went from his classic to the Go Ace version, it was a very big shift. And Kenny Omega, I like this one more. So that was my choice.
I'm glad you said that. I love Kenny Omega's New Japan theme. Like that was amazing. It's so badass. And then when I first saw him come out with this new theme, I was very skeptical. I was like, ooh, I don't know about this one. But I've watched it back on YouTube. I'm like, yo, this is a banger. Yeah, I
didn't notice it the first few weeks, and then it was.
Yeah.
I started noticing that I really dig this tune.
And it's got the music video on YouTube. It's like got lots of views. Like people are super into it. So.
Best digital series. So this is anything that was, a regular feature, but digital only. So last year I went with 10 Pounds of Gold, Wai chose Being the Elite, Braden, WWE 24, and Davie, WWE 365, and their love of numbers for series. This year, I will start things off, and I went with the Road to series that AEW produced. These quickly became my favorite things when they would drop. Very quick, just a tremendous showcase of great promos that I think as a whole, we saw just a great improvement of promos, and from outlets like this that we got to see this year, the emergence of Tully Blanchard back into the spotlight. This to me was like Cody Rhodes' workshop to really get his voice down and elevate himself to one of the top talkers in the industry at this moment, and to me just gave the feel of what I wanted AEW to be. Serious stories, building to matches, and I think that this was when they've kind of gotten away from this series, and I think it's something that I wanted to see more of within AEW, this high level of production that gave you some kind of emotion to build to a match. And I also give an honorable mention because every Monday night, he tags me among many people, and that is PCO and Destro's videos of violence that they do every Monday night, and just the fact that they do these without fail. PCO, Jimmy Corderas. You want consistency among digital drops? It's Jimmy Corderas and PCO in 2019. Davey.
I don't regularly watch any of these digital series, so I feel kind of bad judging, and my pick... there's only been 2 episodes of it, and that's the Stone Cold podcast series on the network. But especially the one with Undertaker, I just think he's such a good interviewer, and to see Undertaker talk for it's like almost 2 hours out of character. They're both shooting Jack throughout the whole thing. I found it fascinating, and I've listened to Austin's podcast for a long time, and I trust he's gonna keep delivering really good shows like this. So I feel bad because I know like there are other shows that have done it weekly since January, and I'm just basing this pretty much on one show. But it really stood out for me this year, and I wanted to mention it.
Braden.
Yeah, I mean, I know I picked like 24 last year, but these shows to me are kind of a blur. Like they call them 365, they call them 24. I just kind of remember the ones that they focus on. For me this year, I don't know if it's 24 or 365.
365 is the one with Michael Rappaport.
It's not that one.
Braden didn't know what he was going to pick, and that's why he had to go down deep on the list.
I chose, I guess it's a 24. It's all about Becky Lynch and like her day. The 24 hours makes sense. Checks out of her like at WrestleMania.
There's also Day of, right?
And there's Chronicle.
What?
Like they're all the same show. They're all the same
They did a focus group. It's like we like stuff that follows a timeline.
So I like the one with Becky Lynch, but there was one that is more recent with the return of Ciampa, where it like follows him with his whole surgery and like stuff. This guy
Is this all the PC YouTube?
Yeah, I think this was a separate. This was a network exclusive show. Yeah,
that PC YouTube channel I think is great.
That is also really cool. But so this one like follows him through his surgery, how he, him and his wife had like miscarriages, and then now he's got a daughter. Like you learn so much, and you were like, whoa, this guy's like one of the most hated guys in the last decade of wrestling. And in the background, he's like going through some shit, and I was like, whoa. And they're airing this while he's returned. And now he's supposed to be a babyface. So what other way is going to get your guy over than watching this? I watched this. I almost cried. And now he's named his move after his daughter, who you are introduced to, Willow's Bell.
Bell, yeah.
And I don't know. It just felt so moving. So I'm just going to say whatever show that was.
Yeah, that thing was absolutely
I think your answer was the same
phenomenal.
last year. It was one of the
they're so similar.
235, 60.
Look, if I see a thing saying we're doing a 24 on Baron Corbin, I'm not going to watch that one. But when I see it with a story I know that's interesting, like Becky Lynch, I knew it was about WrestleMania and main eventing and all that stuff. I had to watch that. When I heard his Ciampa coming back from surgery, I had to watch that. There's certain ones I pick. And
hey, I'd want to see Corbin's story of how he improved so much this year.
I want to see him where he gets his tattoos.
They're probably going to bootleg this clip and put it in there because, guys, we found somebody.
Proving Ground.
Yeah.
Isn't he a part of that?
He was. Yeah, that was a good series.
Mm-hmm.
Way.
So, my pick, I mean, I think what classifies as digital series might be a little bit ambiguous and might cross over for many people's choices for best wrestling series, because a lot of wrestling series these days occur strictly online, digitally. So, if you're strictly asking me what I watch that's on something like YouTube on a regular basis that I consistently enjoy, my pick would be NWA Power. This would be something that completely, I think, caught many people off guard. Certainly, I saw some of the prior pay-per-views that NWA, Billy Corgan and David Lagana were putting out. I think I enjoyed them, but I didn't think I would enjoy necessarily a weekly series that they ended up delivering here. And what's really, of course, made it stand out was an incredible high level of very organic feeling promos in a very unique television studio setting that I think just works for whatever reason. And, in a very crowded landscape, it really is incredible that they've managed to find an hour out of my very busy week every single week. Even though if we're not doing a podcast talking about it, I find time to watch this thing. I consistently enjoy it. So NWA Power, my favorite digital series.
All right. All great picks. So we move on now to Best Book of the Year. Last year, I selected Nitro by Guy Evans. Wai, Braden, and Davie did not have a submission. So we will find out. Did you guys read a book this year? Wai?
No.
Braden?
No.
Davie?
No.
The winner, the unanimous decision for Best Book of 2019, Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, The Storytellers by Greg Oliver and Steven Johnson. It's a fantastic catalog of just so much packed into this book, especially if you're interested in stuff from the 19th century, the early part of the 20th century, just a lot of different power brokers, how wrestling was run, and some lesser known figures that had held a lot of importance at this time, as well as, just tremendous stuff like Dr. Sam Shepard, who created the mandible claw that is now, utilized first by Mick Foley, now by Bray Wyatt. Just like these little threads that connect so much history to the present as well. And they did, fantastic research into all of these different characters.
I wonder if we tie this into just a general media category next year for movies or anything that might be associated with wrestling as well.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know if there's enough out there, to be honest. When it comes to, I think if this is a category we continue.
We've got a year to read a book. Let's just pick a different book to read each, and we'll say it. Even if it's shit, that will be our pick. It's the best wrestling book we read.
I'm terrible though. I have 2 books that I really want to read, and they've been in the same place on my shelf for 2 years.
Audible.com.
But for me, it's if I'm going to commit myself to something like a book, it's not going to be about pro wrestling, and that's typically where I find myself where I just don't really have the time, nor really the desire to. See,
I get ahead of the game, getting an advanced copy of a book that'll come out next year. So I'm all set for next year.
He's already
potentially
awesome.
Jeez.
Best wrestling episode. So just a singular episode that. Let's be honest, with all that you guys have watched this year, I think if there's a particular episode that comes to mind, that's quite the achievement. And let us start with Braden. What was your best wrestling episode?
Yeah, this one's a little tough for me because I watch NXT. We watch NXT every week, and NXT jumped to USA. It added a second hour. It made the show even bigger. So obviously I want to pick one of those. So one specific comes to mind is obviously the first one on USA, but I think I'm going to choose the show that was the debut going head to head with AEW. AEW went on to beat them in the ratings that night. I think it's October 2nd. But on this episode of NXT, it was them cheating. So technically it shouldn't count, but it still was an awesome show. So I'm selfishly just going to pick it. They had the title match, I think even opening the show, just so they made you not tune into the other show. They're just being assholes. And you had Adam Cole, Matt Riddle. I believe that's when Ciampa showed up. You had maybe even Finn Balor somewhere in there.
You had the tag titles match with Street Profits.
You had so much going on. It felt like a takeover on USA, but it was all just to combat AEW. So it was kind of a dick move, but it was an awesome episode of NXT. And for so long in wrestling, we've been waiting for them to. People are always like they need competition to step it up. So the first night in history, they're going to have competition in years. That was the show they put out. It was just really awesome. So that's what kind of sticks out in my head.
Davey, what was your best episode?
Mine's very similar. It ties in with my angle of the year. It's the October 23rd edition of NXT. This one featured the Finn Balor turn at the end, but also had really great wrestling as well. You had Cameron Grimes versus Matt Riddle, which as soon as that match was announced on Twitter, you're going, oh, I didn't know I wanted to see that, but I really want to see that. And the triple threat between Roderick Strong, Keith Lee, and Dominik Dijakovic. Roderick Strong is Mr. TV for me. You can put him on in any match on NXT TV for 20 minutes, and you know it's going to be incredible. You've had this Keith Lee Dijakovic feud that's been boiling with just awesome matches, and then you had that triple threat with some pretty crazy, scary spots in there as well. And to finish the show with that angle with Finn, that was the episode that stood out the most to me.
Wei?
My favorite episode of wrestling television, I suppose, this year was the NXT invasion of WWE SmackDown. In a year where I think, obviously we've seen a lot, the ones that do stand out are the ones that are certainly different from the others. And this was a very different one, not just for the actual content itself, but for the story that led up to it. WWE turned, I would say, a pretty interesting situation with half of its talent being stuck overseas in Saudi Arabia into something that I think became one of the more memorable additions of pro wrestling TV in a very, very long time. This had just a feel of great freshness, seeing all these, new faces on TV, on Fox. This is not just USA, but on Fox. And I think the booking of NXT talent on that particular show was just exactly what you would want from a debuting faction of brand new wrestlers. It was a great start to what would become, the primary promotional tactic of that year's Survivor Series, and of course ended with Adam Cole versus Daniel Bryan, culminating in just a wonderful visual at the end of the show.
That was also my pick, the November 1st edition of SmackDown, I thought it was a real interesting testament, the fact that when their backs were against the wall, this is the show that they had to race to put together, and it was like just right down to the last minute, getting the NXT crew there in time. Shayna's arrival. Pat McAfee on commentary was a lot of fun. You had a great, to me, that was the shift where NXT was really elevated by not just being presented as equals, but above SmackDown on that show. It was just a tremendous handling of NXT. It set up your Survivor Series. It just served all these different objectives for the company at the time. And they were doing it by basically throwing out the show they had on paper and coming up with something that I will guarantee was way better than what was initially written down. So I thought that they just came out and had a terrific show that did have a benefit beyond just the one night itself.
It's so funny because that was in Buffalo. And David was like, hey, should we get on a mega bus and go there? And I was literally like, no, I don't want to go all this way to watch Baron Corbin. And then halfway through the day, he's like, okay, so the situation's changed and now it's this. And I was like, wouldn't have been fun to go to, but whatever.
And I failed to mention, again, the last year's picks. Davey and Braden chose the July 11th episode of NXT that featured that tremendous match between the Undisputed Era and Mustache Mountain.
Yeah.
Who
great.
Allegedly are still a team in the company, I believe. Wai chose Glow Season 2, Episode 4, The Mother of All Matches. And I chose an episode of Ring of Honor from September 8th that featured this Iron Man match between Jay Lethal and Jonathan Gresham. Next is Best Wrestling TV Series. And last year, Davey, Braden, and Wai chose NXT. I chose Glow. I guess if that counts as well.
Yeah.
I'll start things off because it's going to be a similar pick for me. I went with Glow Season 3. That some people were more down on this season, but I would say for all the stuff that me and Wai review, those were my favorite reviews that we did this year. I thought it was a really great season. I'm glad that season 4 is going to be it. I think that they set up a lot of cool stuff for season 4. This was a year they progressed. Sheila became such a main character. Bash was a very interesting, complicated figure throughout the entire season. And then you had Debbie's new boyfriend that kind of has this Ted Turner vibe to him. And now Debbie will be running her own wrestling company. So I think you've set up some cool stuff for season 4 and ended off on a good note where they can be out after 4 seasons.
It's a show that I'm really glad John and I did podcasts for, because I don't otherwise see us having discussions about identity and things like that this series introduced this particular season on any other professional wrestling related show. So it's just, this is a good show, period. And the fact that it has something to do with wrestling just means that we get to cover it for our particular audience. So it was a series of podcasts I really enjoyed. It was a TV show I really enjoyed doing. If you don't mind me going next, I'm just kind of taking my turn. But that was not my choice. I want to give honorable mention to Glow, of course, but also to The Wrestlers on Vice, hosted by our good friend Damian Abraham. And this is not just because he's one of the hosts, but it is legitimately, I think, one of the best shows I've seen that documents professional wrestling, not just in North America, but around the world, telling us about things like, Witch Catch Wrestling or the Flying Cholitas, Colombia, was it? Or a South American country. I'm sorry if I misremember, but a really good show. Bolivia, thank you so much. Yes,
he was screaming right now as he was listening to this.
But The Wrestlers, I'm really proud of Damien for being a part of. However, I will go again with a repeat of my favorite wrestling series, and that would be NXT. I think consistently it delivers high quality production with a great mix of storytelling and great in-ring action that I really feel like is sort of the pinnacle of modern professional wrestling weekly television.
Davey.
Yeah, I'm going to be boring. It's NXT once again. There was a worry when they moved to 2 hours that they'd kind of lose what made them special, and I think they've stuck to exactly that, just expanded it. The wrestling's fantastic. The storytelling's always great. It feels more adult. They don't treat you like an idiot when you're watching it. It's the best wrestling show for me.
Is it a complete repeat of our picks from last year, Braden?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with Wai. I have another show that kind of stuck with me. It wasn't necessarily a wrestling show, but it was a Vice show, the Wrestling of Darkness or Darkness
Dark Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring. That's what it was. I watched
Wrestling the Darkness.
Wrestling with the Darkness. There's so many things with wrestling in the shadows. That's where it gets to, yeah, it confuses me. This show was a lot of fun. I found it on YouTube and I watched one episode and then I found myself.
Great way to support them.
Well, it was on.
They're on YouTube.
Yeah, I believe it was on. Yeah. Okay. I think it was.
Let's just say.
I hope it was. Shout out Vice.
I don't know.
Watch this on my Crave account.
Well, then
it's on Crave, so I wouldn't imagine it'd be on YouTube as well.
Well, then I'll say that. Wrong. I'll say that right now. Put it on YouTube because I'll watch it on there if it's on there.
We're trying to make some money on it too.
I'm a millennial. We don't have cable. Come on, get out of here.
Okay.
So this show is really interesting.
They got a season 2. No thanks to Braden.
Yeah. Hey, don't they film that here too with the Super Kick guys?
They do shoot some of the scenes.
They're doing an Eddie Guerrero one coming out this season, which sounds great. But yeah, it just it got me interested. I like true crime documentaries and stuff. So this was bringing both worlds together. Like the Bruiser Brody one, yeah, I knew all about it. But watching this, I'm like, whoa, this is deep, man. This is crazy. But that's just my noteworthy one. I, too, side with the yellow and black brand NXT because week in, week out, like they have constant great shows. We were naming best episodes, but like there's many others. There was a match on TV between the Revival and Undisputed Era that was fantastic. And AEW launched this year. And NXT is what AEW should be, in my opinion. I thought AEW would be that kind of show. Whereas NXT is literally just like stepped away from kind of silly angles and stuff and just doing wrestling. And I think that's what I like when I watch wrestling. So NXT kills it for me.
Okay, best event. A lot to cover with this category. Last year, we were split. We had Wai and Braden going with Wrestle Kingdom 12 that Braden attended. And Davie and I chose NXT TakeOver New Orleans that Davie attended. I did not. This year... let's go with Braden.
This is a show I also attended this year. It was during WrestleMania weekend, and it was my first time in the Barclays Center, where
I thought he was going to say our Q&A show.
Yeah, that was noteworthy as well. Not to mention, the show I'm picking is NXT TakeOver New York. Or Brooklyn, depending whatever you call it. This show was crazy, top to bottom, one of the best wrestling shows ever. Match of the year candidate is the first opening match there with the tag. Then you had Riddle and Dream. Like any of the matches that night, you could argue that was the best. But then like the main event with Cole, and it's just everything top to bottom. I don't think I've ever sat through a wrestling event and went, wow. Like, I didn't even want to go to the washroom during that event. I don't think I did go to the washroom during that event. I just
sucked for Davie next to him.
I just thought like the 5 card thing that they do, the 5 matches is how you should be doing these things. So I thought I got my money's worth out of WrestleMania weekend doing that show. I don't know if I'll ever go to a show that good, top to bottom. Like, realistically, I just think like this year, I'm like, I don't think I need to go anymore. I don't think that'll be topped. And I think this card, top to bottom, is one of the best wrestling pay-per-views, shows, whatever you want to call it, maybe of all time.
Davie, did you go with TakeOver or something different?
I went with the same thing. The fact that we did like a roundtable review of that show after, and the fact that all of us, like our like least favorite match of the show was Pete Dunne versus Volta.
Which is like crazy.
Which is a really good match.
Some people's match of the year this year.
Loads of people's nomination for match of the year. Shows just how good that show was. And built exactly how it should. You had just incredible wrestling. You've got like the ridiculousness of Velveteen Dream's entrance, and that's something I always get excited about. It's like, what's Dream going to come out as? Okay, we're in New York. What's he going to do? And then just the emotional climax at the end with Gargano and Cole in an incredible match. Ciampa coming out at the end to give Johnny a hug and like just kind of wrapping up that whole epic story that's been going on. It was just an incredible show, and I'm so glad I was there to see it.
Yes. What I remember most about that show is after going to that post-show press conference and then playing Kevin McAllister on the subway system because I was lost.
Oh.
Wai, your event of the year.
My event of the year, if we're talking about a singular event, I went with the G1 Climax A Block Final. To me, I just, it's the one event where we actually rate our matches, and I just went back, and this was a show filled with a number of extra large matches, extra large plus even, including Zack Sabre Jr. versus Kenta, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Will Ospreay, which was probably my match of the night for that particular event, and ending, of course, with the A Block Final, determining the winner, ultimately the winner of the G1 Climax in Kazuchika Okada versus Kota Ibushi. The G1, I think I would have had a number of nights to pick from, but looking back at my records, this is probably the one that I would choose amongst them all.
I went with something different that maybe like bell to bell. We maybe got better matches on some of the G1 shows, but I just so love this show. And my greatest compliment is that I can say that because it was the absolute dirt worst streaming experience I had this year to power through this. And this crowd overcame it. The match quality overcame it. And that was New Japan's Royal Quest from the Copper Box in London. This came the same day that the NXT UK takeover was taking place and All Out was going on later that night. So it was an insane day of wrestling, watching all these shows. But this was headlined by Kazuchika Okada, Minoru Suzuki, which was a phenomenal match. Hiroshi Tanahashi and Zack Sabre Jr. Having another singles match. It was definitely marred by the injury to Kenta during the match with Tomohiro Ishii, but Aussie Open also having a phenomenal showing there, and had we not got the injury, I think Aussie Open would have been probably figured into the tag league at the end of the year as well. But man, this crowd, A++, they were so tremendous, and I really hope New Japan does a big show at the very least at the Copper Box, if not opening night of the G1, that I am very much in favor of doing that first night in the UK as opposed to the US this year. So Royal Quest was my selection. Best Broadcaster. Last year, Wai, you chose Kevin Kelly. Myself, Braden, and Davie chose Mauro Ranallo. This year, I'm going to go with Excalibur, who is now on a weekly platform on AEW. I think that this guy, to me, I just think it's so great that someone like an Excalibur is featured on a major show like AEW Dynamite. That here is a guy that is, at his core, a wrestling nerd that knows every single story, every single move, and it's not like some kind of mark of shame that he has to like hide this knowledge. I think it's super that he's included here. I think the fact that one of our many stupid controversies of the year was, can we put this guy on with a mask? Because God knows that's what's holding them back, is guys wearing a fucking mask, and that's a problem. So he is my choice. Also an honorable mention to Lenny Leonard, who is consistently awesome, and he just lacks, to me, the attention that Evolve gets. And this year, he got to become one of the English voices for Dragon Gate, and I think that guy could be on any major wrestling show calling it weekly. This guy could be on Raw calling the show every week, and he would be great at it. And I don't think he's a guy that gets enough credit. Braden.
I was going to pick the same choice I picked last year, but I think I'm going to switch it up because I watched a lot of New Japan this year as well. I know I do a show of NXT, and now on our Patreon, we get to talk about a lot of the other wrestling that we watch. But last year on this very show, I think, did you say Wai chose Kevin Kelly? Because you said that he has now become, if you watch New Japan in English, which is amazing, you can do that now, and he is like, he's the voice of it to me. Like when I think of it, I think of him. So I pick him. I pick Kevin Kelly because when I watch New Japan, I don't think I could do it without him in the English thing anymore. Because I used to watch the old clips when you would find them on YouTube and such, where it would all be in Japanese, which is amazing. But now that a lot of people who speak English and understand it want to watch those feeds. His voice, his call, and I know people give him shit for trying to almost like, it's not like he's mocking the Japanese calls, but some of his calls are so amazing when he lets things go like Destino. Like, I hate that. Yeah, I know, but I love it. I think it's amazing.
I'm waiting because the ultimate payoff is he's going to do it one of these days when it's a false finish, and he's going to have to catch himself on the like 18th O at the end of it.
Destino. I think he's great. I love the fact that no matter of the pairings that they put him with, he sounds good with like literally any of those guys, even if it's just two of them. I shout out Childish Gambino. What's his name?
Yeah, Childish Gambino.
Yeah,
right.
Gambino, the Aussie. Yeah, he's Gino, man. That guy is great. I think him and Kevin Kelly.
You want to say most improved as a broadcaster? Gino Gambino is growing on me. Yeah. I really enjoy him.
That guy needs to be doing this for the rest of his life. He is so fantastic. Gino Gambino, him and Kevin Kelly are they're so good together. Like they sound so legit. Kevin Kelly for me, I've watched so much of it this year, and I'm like, man, looking back, if he wasn't calling it, I don't know if I'd get as much excitement into some of these matches. So Kevin Kelly.
Wait.
I personally like to start thinking of like this category more so in terms of teams rather than individuals, and this will certainly be applicable for next week. But in particular this week, I think
just setting that table.
No, because honestly, like you can have somebody who's very talented, but you put them in a bad group, they certainly don't stand out, and I think that happens the other way around too. So my pick this year for best team would be the NXT broadcast team, consisting of Mauro Ranallo, Nigel McGuinness, and Beth Phoenix, who I think again, along with I think my praise for NXT's excellent production, the announce team is right up there, a huge part of that. Not only are they great on TV, great insight, I think great, of course, like Mauro is just to me like one of the greats of all time in terms of how he can follow a match and add excitement to it and generally just make the experience better. And I think you have Nigel and Beth who really kind of come into their own and adding a great deal of support in the color role as well. So that was my favorite team this year.
And Davey, your choice.
I'm going to go for Dio Madden because you didn't see Vic Joseph stand up to Brock Lesnar, did you? In all seriousness, it's Mauro again. Braden and I just went back and rewatched so many great matches from the year for our best of the year review, and there are matches we saw that we haven't watched back since actually seeing it live. And once you've seen it just once again with Mauro's commentary, you can't imagine it any other way. He, to me, is what like a John Williams does to a Star Wars film. He adds, like, it's great already, and he just adds so much more. The sort of, I know people are kind of down on the pop culture references, but he does it so seamlessly. It doesn't seem like it's up his sleeve. It just comes out. I think he's incredible. He adds so much drama and emotion to matches for me. He's the GOAT.
Come back to Twitter, Mauro.
Best character is next. So whatever your definition is for best character is what you can go with. Last year, Braden and Davey chose Velveteen Dream. Wai and I chose Becky Lynch. So this is, best character, best personality. Very, there's a lot of crossover there. Wai, who was your best character of 2019?
I suppose like my definition of a character is somebody who's strictly that and not necessarily an extension of who they really are in real life. Like sometimes I almost think of this as like, who is the best cartoon, I suppose, even if it's a cartoon version of themselves. And I think about it, my pick this year would be Orange Cassidy, somebody who, I don't know how this man is in real life. He could very well be the same character, but I think, I'd seen him previously on some GCW shows, but I think this was the year where he really hit the mainstream and, made his mark, so to speak, in the industry. Just a very unique, something that shouldn't have worked on television at all. And I think there's still maybe some questions about how far you can take a character like this, but certainly from all accounts of people who go to these events live, he is a highlight who I don't think has reached nearly his potential yet.
Braden.
I too pick someone from AEW, but I'm picking someone who's been many different kind of characters, but continues to change his character, and that's Chris Jericho. Because when I thought of AEW starting as a weekly TV show, I literally thought in my head, how are they going to make Jericho instantly the main heel guy? And they got to do that because he'll run this company with a character somehow, and he did that. I've watched him as so many years of different versions of himself, and this one he still continues to create new catchphrases that are ridiculous. But he knows what he is now, and I think maybe it is an extension of himself, but really turned up. Like if Chris Jericho's himself at a 5, the character Le Champion is really the character I'm choosing. It's like at a 12. Like he just turns himself up. It's so ridiculous, but every time he talks, I have to watch it. And what he says, I don't believe. Everything he says is ridiculous with his rhymes and stupid names and things that he always says, but everything he says makes me want to watch it. I think the character is definitely something they literally desperately need to keep having on TV, because if they didn't have that character, the show would be a little bit more bare-boned without that guy, the champion.
And I think even when he gets upset at people on Twitter, I think it's him turning the volume up.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
he's a character all the time, so I don't. Yeah,
It's all right.
Davey, do you have a different choice?
Now, I was debating whether to pick Bray Wyatt, Mr. Rogers, The Fiend, as a character.
Man, the forums are just like locked and loaded for some of Davey's picks.
As a character, I think it's been fascinating.
It's valid.
And I think he's committed fully to it. It was He was on TV for months and months before he even wrestled, and people were interested. People would tune into Raw just to see the Firefly Funhouse and weren't even sure if they liked it. You'd watch it and go, I don't know if I get it, but it's different.
Yes.
And it's so committed, and there's so many little details, which is unlike WWE. They're not used to nuances and stuff, and it's completely his creation. But at the end of the year, execution and how it actually works as a wrestler, I can't pick it. So I'm also going with Chris Jericho. The fact we've seen like 19 different versions of Jericho over the years, and each one is still Chris Jericho. It's not like, now I'm a robot Chris Jericho, or now I'm an alien or anything. It's always Chris Jericho. And a lot of the time, and I love Jericho as a wrestler, but I just want to see him talk. And that I'm not that kind of wrestling fan. I want to see great matches, but Jericho's got a 15-minute segment in the ring. I want to watch it. And I have friends who'll come over and go, what did Jericho do this week? It's like, all right, let's load up the Jericho segment. Like, just so over the top, but just completely owns it. The video of him in the hot tub, still wearing the scarf, his scarf in the water, drinking from the bottle as he pours out a little bit of the bubbly. Just so funny. And how he could turn just legit fucking up and losing this brand new expensive title.
He turned it into his character.
Into an angle and to further his character. It's amazing. The guy is a genius.
He's like a rock star douche, is this character, and it works so much for me. It's a character I have to watch.
And it's funny because you watch him from being young, like almost a teenager Jericho, the wannabe rock star, and now he's the jaded rock star. It's fascinating to watch.
I had Jericho and Orange Cassidy on my short list. I'm just going to choose a different one, so we have some other choices in here. An honorable mention to Selena De La Renta on MLW, who is only 22 and has, an unlimited ceiling in terms of star power. My choice is going to be MJF, someone that, came from MLW. I think that's where most first got to see him, and now getting further exposure on AEW, where this is a guy that can absolutely carry a segment. He is already one of the best talkers, an unbelievable cocky presence about him that is something you really don't see a lot of guys settle into until well into their career, to have that kind of poise. And he's got it at the age of 23 and completely committed to the act. And it's just been remarkable to watch this guy and the segments that he can carry. So it'll be an interesting year this year as well, to see what his role is in AEW and how high you go with him as one of their featured heels. Okay, let us continue on here as we are getting into the home stretch here. Best on the mic is our next choice, and last year, myself and Wai chose Samoa Joe. Braden had Tommaso Ciampa, and Davie Portman choosing Daniel Bryan. Davie.
I'm going to go as same character. It's Chris Jericho. He just owns it every time he's in there. That line when his improv skills as well, when everyone was chanting "We the People" for Jake Hager, and he just straight away goes, "No, we're not chanting that. That was a shitty catchphrase from Lousy Creative," or whatever the line was. He's a genius, Chris Jericho.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in and just say I picked the same guy as well. But a shout out to Cody Rhodes, because earlier I wanted to pick him as most improved because he does keep getting improved. He's cut not just one, which a lot of people think is his best promo, but he's cut a bunch of promos, whether it be in his video package and stuff. But like, he is so good at actually making me he sells me a match. Like Cody Rhodes learned how to fucking sell a match. He can pull you into want you to see it. But when it comes to the week to week stuff, like, yeah, Chris Jericho can do the more serious, but still be funny. Just in the end of the year, he's challenging the Jungle Boy and he calls him a piece of shit. I'm laughing my ass off. I'm like, how simple is that? But I love it. He's the best.
Wait.
I went with Cody Rhodes. I think as sort of, you're a very controlled, just seasoned professional wrestling speaker. He sounds so good to me whenever he's doing anything, whether it be on Road to, or, even on a conference call. He seems like somebody who, pays a lot of attention, I think, to the way he presents himself, and I thought this was exemplified not just in obviously the great promos he's cut in the lead up to Full Gear, but I think the backstage little thing he did with in the limo with Tony Schiavone was really great as well. So when you suggested that can you choose Cody Rhodes as most improved again, I absolutely think that's valid because he's made some great leaps ever since he's left the WWE. First, perhaps last year, but secondly, now that he had already kind of like reached that a certain height after All In, I thought he jumped even higher up another level as AEW Dynamite became a regular TV show where now I look at him as the top babyface above guys like Kenny Omega or John Moxley, and that's not something I would have really considered at the beginning when you looked at this roster, that Cody would be, I think, the person I would be most excited about.
Yeah, I thought this year, like, the promos to me across the board, like a lot of guys stood out a lot more than in previous years where as much as the wrestling's advanced, the talking has not. So this year I thought was a step forward. Honorable mention to David Starr, that promo we cut on Sinclair Broadcasting, all of the stuff in the Sean Ryan videos. I mean, he to me is someone, and not having the exposure of one of the major national companies. He's been doing it in OTT and he's been doing it in, all across the board, but it's very much like he's his own person that people are following. Nick Aldis as well. Like now he has a bit of a platform that people can see what a talent he is. But to me, yeah, it comes down to like promos are designed to draw money. And I think you have to look at Cody and Chris Jericho. So I give it to Cody because I think we have this belief that it's impossible to be a top babyface these days. I would say it's tough in one company, I would say, to be a top babyface. Everywhere else, they're great with babyfaces. And Cody, like, could you imagine Cody being like in this role as the number one babyface in AEW? To me, he really just jumped ahead of the pack this year and is the glue of that show that you can work things around. But he needed a Chris Jericho this year. So I think it's like two sides of the same coin. Those two, to me, were the standouts this year, but I will narrow down my pick to Cody. Best feud from last year, I went with Okada and Tanahashi, and you three chose Ciampa Gargano. This year, I will start things off. Minoru Suzuki, Jushin Thunder Liger. To me, they had that awesome angle, the change into Kishin Liger, and I thought a pretty satisfying blow off at the end with Suzuki beating him at King of Pro Wrestling. Personally, looking at how things ended, I kind of wish this was the retirement angle. That by the end of it, I was saying, okay, we must have something we're not thinking about, that they're gonna shoot an incredible angle for Wrestle Kingdom, and I think that is part of the reason people were little underwhelmed by the fact we're getting a tag match for his retirement after you had this awesome story between Suzuki and Liger that I think you could have ended the career off of. But you still got the feud, and I thought both did a phenomenal job. Davey.
I found this one quite tough because
Me too.
I think it was so easy for me last year to pick Ciampa Gargano. And I'm torn between two. And that's Kofi versus, and I'm not going to say Daniel Bryan, it's kind of Kofi versus everyone, because it was Vince involved, and just like black wrestlers in WWE, full stop. And Kofi represented that. And Ronda versus Becky, which so much of that was the first part of this year. And I think we forget because it ended up in a triple threat and it ended in April. I am going to go Kofi and everyone, I'm going to say.
Way.
This one, I agree with you guys. I thought it was a little bit difficult. I think I have a lot of great matches, you know, and maybe like great feuds that took place in the span of a month or two. But nothing I would necessarily classify as, you know, something that was like a year-long thing until I started to think about, you know, promotions that I wasn't paying as close enough attention to. And I think if I have to make a pick for like best feud, I really can't ignore what Jordan Devlin and David Starr have been doing over in OTT.
That was on my list.
It's certainly a feud that I wish I had more time to devote to, but just from seeing the video packages and from seeing what matches I have seen, the inclusion of Walter into this program as well, extending from what they did last year, I just did not sense professional wrestling storytelling across any other promotion that extended to this length in such detail as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great pick. Braden?
This was a tough year to pick because exactly what you just said, Wai. There's so many feuds that were felt shorter than what we're used to in like wrestling. So I had a bunch and they were all kind of mentioned. So I'm just going to kind of pick one from that. And I'm going to pick the lead up to Mania with Becky and Ronda, but also shoehorn Charlotte in there somehow. Because it was going when the year started, but they didn't wrestle. In fact, they still haven't wrestled one-on-one, which is still something you can do down the line because of this. Like, I'm talking about like the TV feuds, the stuff leading into WrestleMania, Becky calling her a dope, you little weirdo, just stuff like that makes me. I kept being like, wow, I'm more into the feud of the women's division than I am in like the men's. I didn't give a shit about Seth and Brock really. I was like, cool, the match would be great, which it didn't really happen. And I guess with the women's too. But I just felt like the feud itself was really interesting because I was someone who did watch Ronda Rousey beforehand, and I was someone who's super invested in Becky this past year, and to seeing them fight but not have a match this whole time was cool to see.
Best promotion last year, you two chose NXT, which I guess is, we can debate if that qualifies as a promotion.
Right.
But
Sure.
Wai and I chose New Japan Pro Wrestling. Wai, best promotion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on the side of the fence that sees NXT as a brain within WWE. So because of the inconsistency attached to NXT, it's tough for me to pick WWE. So I would say for consistent, high-quality shows with high-quality wrestling, my pick continues to be New Japan Pro Wrestling.
I went with New Japan as well. They had a year where, you know, not that different from 2016, where they lost a good chunk of their talent and their biggest star or one of their biggest stars in Kenny Omega. That was a huge loss to them. And this year, we certainly saw a reduction in their popularity in the US, but in Japan, I think they fortified very well. They went all in with Jay White to mixed results. I don't think he's a finished product yet, but I think that, you know, they have shown their commitment to making him into a top guy. An unbelievable Best of the Super Juniors, an unbelievable G1 this year, a World Tag League that happened, and overall, still to me, the strongest company that if you're just looking for bell-to-bell action, characters, stories, to me, New Japan stayed on top of my mountain. Braden.
Yeah, I mean, this one, it's the same two that kind of go up in my head. It's literally everything you just said. Like, how can a company stay killing it when they just lost Kenny and the Bucks? Like, those are big guys to me. Like, those were why a lot of North American fans watched that product to begin with, and they lost them. So obviously all these people are going to go follow where those guys go, but then New Japan still like kills it. You had the send off with Kenny in the beginning of the year, and then they continue to do it. I'm the kind of guy who I pick and choose what I watch in all my wrestling, including New Japan. And I picked through the Super Junior tournament, and it was so fire. Like, all these matches were crazy. And then you watch the G1, and it's the same thing. So it's like they managed to still keep people intact. But I'm going to choose NXT because, yeah, they're under the WWE umbrella, but they're like a separate show. They do their own invasions on SmackDown. They moved to USA this year, and sometimes, most of the time, they beat AEW in the competition in the ratings. So I think if you can separate it from a WWE, yeah, I can pick NXT thinking it's its own entity, even though we all know they own it. So NXT for me.
So Braden chooses WWE as the best promotion. Davey?
Yeah, I've gone away from I see NXT as WWE now, especially with the move to USA and with them being integrated in things like Survivor Series, and them now, like, before they'd treat NXT as non-canon. So you'd bring someone onto the main roster and the NXT title wouldn't exist. Their names would change. They'd no longer be Rowe and Hansen. They'll be fucking Eric. Whereas now it feels like it's all one company, and NXT is heads and shoulders the best show on WWE TV. And out of all the other promotions, it's just clearly New Japan. Their consistency is so much better. Granted, I don't watch it weekly or anything like that, but the G1 is just my favorite time of the year. My girlfriend hates me because I'm like, we're watching wrestling for a month. But it's
next year, buy her the Dallas DVDs and say, hey,
yeah,
check back 31 episodes of season 1, and I'll go watch a G1.
I've set up a TV in the scrump room. You can go in there, and I'm watching the G1.
Oh, no.
The D1.
But
maybe they'll start off night 1 in Dallas again, and perfect.
Maybe, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No
but yeah,
climaxes,
the G1 and the best of the Super Juniors this year were just so fantastic, and that I treat as like, you spread it out. That's a year's worth of TV. So.
I would also like to mention OTT, that if there's any place I would love to go watch a show, it'd be an OTT card. Mm-hmm. And I would say Game Changer continues to me, like I would, as you see now, PWG, not the automatic sellout it was. It's still, to me, a prestige platform for a performer to get on. But in terms of just taking someone no one's heard of and a guy that could get over in one night, man or woman, and boom, the clip is up. Like GCW, look at the stars that have come out of there that are suddenly like the new indie darlings that get that buzz off of GCW. Like, they have become an incredible springboard for a lot of talent.
They're the promotion I'm most looking forward to WrestleMania weekends now. You know, like
look how well they've carved out like their niche, WrestleMania weekend, and it's like it's growing. Like Joey Janela's spring break this year is going to be a big deal that week.
Bloodsport continues to be a really big
like
thing.
they're really ahead of the curve and just doing great stuff.
Yeah.
Best tag team last year, the winners were the Golden Lovers was Wai's pick. Davey and Braden chose the Young Bucks, and I went with the Undisputed Era. And this year, Braden, your best tag team was...
This one was really tough because NXT isn't really a show that we have Undisputed Era. We lost all our other tag teams this year. Like, literally, that's all we have left is Undisputed Era. And they've had a great year, but I don't know, because then I look at the Revival, who has been a favorite of mine, who've been on the main roster, and they were given like chicken shit, and they've turned it somehow into chicken salad. So I just don't know. But I'm not picking either of those, and I'm picking the Young Bucks again, because when I think of AEW, that's literally what I think. If they put a card out saying the Young Bucks are fighting tonight, then I know I'm getting at least a good match on this show. I feel like I mentioned that Jericho is kind of like a pawn in this thing, that if he wasn't there, it'd be a more bare bones. And I feel like if the Bucks weren't there, then it'd be even worse. So I'm going to pick them because sure, they haven't had, they had that crazy ladder match that a lot of people loved this year. That wasn't even one of my favorite matches of the year, but I just think that they still remained consistent. And every time you watch them, they still are the best tag team. So I think you could put them against any team, and they get people over too. So I don't know. I just think that those are stand up for me.
Davey, was your pick fucking Eric?
No, it was, excuse me, it was Undisputed Era this year, even though I think the tag division hasn't been as hot in NXT. And when I say Undisputed Era, I mean Bobby, Kyle, and Roddy. The thing that clinched it for me this year was just a few weeks ago when Bobby Fish got legit hurt in the match, and Roddy takes his place. He's got his red CKs on show throughout the whole thing. So, like, this wasn't meant to happen, and seamlessly he fits in because they know each other so well and can make it work seamlessly. I think their chemistry, like the three of them, is incredible. And that's what wins it for me this year.
That performance from Roderick Strong on that show was like
crazy,
definitely a year highlight. So I'm glad you mentioned it.
He is still underappreciated, even at the level that he's at. Like, that guy is just an unbelievable talent.
You do need a Best TV Worker of the Year award for Roddy Strong. You said earlier, but like legit, he puts on the TV matches, does all the work for everyone else. He's the workhorse.
If he was at like a world champion level, I think he'd definitely be in contention for best in the year. It's just about exposure with him at this point.
Who is your best tag team boy?
Well, I found this one pretty tough as well because I don't think anybody really stood up from the products that I was really watching. Certainly, my pick last year, the Bucks. Actually, it was the Golden Lovers last year, but I mean, the Bucks to me are probably still my favorite tag team in AEW, but for their year of, I would say, relative inconsistency up until October, it's tough for me to pick them. So my pick went to LAX and Santana and Ortiz, who, I think in addition to them being standout draws for me at a time when I was not really watching Impact at all outside of like, their pay-per-view events, the, LAX matches were always something I was looking forward to. Their very, busy schedules during WrestleMania weekend when I got to see them wrestle everybody from like, Rock and Roll Express to like I forget who we saw them wrestle on that WrestleCon show, but like they were wrestling pretty much everybody on every show, and then ending up in as part of AEW's hottest heel faction at the end of 2019. It really does feel like 2019 was a big year for them, of a lot of growth, and they seem to be reaping the benefits of all their hard work right now.
I had a few. I thought that if they had teamed more often, I thought Will Ospreay and Robbie Eagles would have had a real shot. I love those two together. I think that's a tremendous tag team. They just didn't, to me, do enough this year. So I went with the team that just booked themselves nonstop from start to finish, even when maybe they didn't need to at this point. And that was Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix, the Lucha Brothers. They, starting off the year with, the feud with LAX in Impact and then going to AEW and just not easing up on their schedule at all this year. I think they're almost at the point now where they should be looking at, preserving themselves just for the long game now. It's like they have established enormous names for themselves at this point that they don't have to be filling up their calendars at this stage. But to me, Rey Fenix, I conflate some of this with the year Rey Fenix had, that I think there's an argument for him for Wrestler of the Year. I think he just blew it out of the water this year.
Yeah, we all chose them, I think. Did we all choose tag teams?
Yes, we all did.
What about, but now I know like that usually when it comes to choosing like a match of the year, that tag team matches don't really end up. But I've mentioned that I really liked the tag team match from TakeOver New York with Aleister Black and Ricochet, who they won the Dusty Classic. So they were like another team that were just put together like superheroes versus the Viking Raiders. So I just have to shout that out because I think that is like contention for literally match of the year for me. And that was just a throwaway tag team title match in NXT. So they weren't a tag team of the year, but great match.
Okay, we're getting into the final few awards here. We're going to Best Wrestler. And last year we broke this up into male and female categories. For Female Wrestler of the Year, Wai, Braden, and I chose Becky Lynch, and Davey, you chose Meiko Satomura. This year, Davey,
nice.
Who is your pick?
This year I picked Io Shirai.
How dare you?
Because Braden, why is that?
Because you really like Io Shirai. Don't steal my gimmick, dude.
I just set you up for your fucking slogan.
On my list, Shirai finished high.
Did she?
Io Shirai, I think since she evolved the character, just all round just an interesting character to watch. Her music is cool, and she killed it with Io Shirai, with Candice LeRae. That moonsault off the cage in War Games, insane. Just so exciting to watch.
Yeah. I'm going to jump in right now then. I also choose Io Shirai. Shout out Becky Lynch. She had a crazy year. She main evented WrestleMania. There was a slip up at the end of that match, so that maybe throw people off. But
I wouldn't say Female Wrestler of the Year.
Yeah, I still go with Io Shirai. This was a character that changed and she turned into something new. I feel like that was that NXT where you watched USA and the first thing you saw was Io Shirai come out and wrestle a match, and you're like, whoa, this is not what I'm used to watching, my classic WWE wrestling. And here is a Japanese woman coming out. Like, I just felt like it was a bigger stepping stone than kind of overlooked in a lot of people's eyes. But everything she did, like David said, like so many things that just stood out for me. We went to TakeOver Toronto. Her match with Candice was just phenomenal. And Io Shirai gets me high. She's the genius of the sky. I don't know what else. My oh my. The Joshi Judas. She gets me through this.
Wai, are you continuing in the trend of Io Shirai?
No, I'm not, but I'm going to stick with NXT. I'm going to go with Shayna Baszler. I feel like, every division sort of needs its nucleus to really work around, and I certainly see, this really is to me the year where I think the NXT's female division felt like it was at its peak. I think it was it was a year where I think a women's division in any wrestling promotion sort of took center stage for me, and that it was largely all built around Shayna Baszler, who ends, sort of her reign in 2019. But I think throughout the year, sometimes I hear people complaining about her style. I absolutely love every single one of her matches. I love her submission style. I think she carries just a great demeanor, both in terms of just like her entrance and throughout her in-ring, of course, and also even her promos. I'm just a fan of her in general. I thought she did great, in particular, both up against, in the feud, in the build-up to Survivor Series against Becky Lynch, more than held her own and felt like a star on her level. So I'm excited to see where she goes in 2020.
So I'm going with a different choice than all three of you, and I am picking Tessa Blanchard from Impact Wrestling, who I think you could argue is the MVP of Impact this past year. To me, somebody that it's not just a gimmick that we're going to go with this female to be in the world title picture. I think that she greatly improved this year. She, pretty much the story of this whole year has been her feuding with OVE, losing to Sami Callihan at Slammiversary, which I guess they could have called Samiversary, and building up to the rematch that's going to be happening later this month. Yes. So, yeah, I thought Tessa Blanchard just, to me, as a personality, evolved quite a bit as well. And to me, had a ton of great intergender matches that worked. They were believable, and someone that this company can legitimately build itself around and differentiate itself from. That has been the biggest struggle for Impact, is just trying to do something different. And they've got someone in Tessa Blanchard who, it's believed her deal is up this summer. And I think she becomes as intriguing a figure to watch in 2020 as anyone about where she is when we're talking this time next year. Best male wrestler. Braden, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was an really easy pick a few months ago, really. But then I was like, I don't know. This is the toughest choice for me this year. I've watched so much wrestling, and the guy who's been most consistent in all these matches that I've watched, and a lot of people's matches of the years or top 10s or whatever, is Will Ospreay, obviously, because he's just killed it. We mentioned Kenny and the Bucks leaving New Japan, and this guy, he was there already, but he fills this, like, he's the junior heavyweight slot, but I feel like this guy is the next big star there, and he already is. I think every time I watch him in a match, he is phenomenal. It's like a movie every time, and there's so many different matches that he had that were match of the year, and I had a different pick, but you know what? I'm not picking it. I'm picking Will Ospreay because every single match this year was just fantastic. The Shingo storyline going into that, defeating him, felt like a classic wrestling, just everything in full here. So I'm just going to say that Will Ospreay is my best wrestler.
And let's not forget that the Kota Ibushi match was this year's.
Oh, right. January 4th.
That was a Wrestle Kingdom match.
It felt like from day one, this man took that crown.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. He really just, I've been a big fan of this guy for for the past few years. He's been on everyone's radar. He's been stealing the show. I've watched him live a bunch of times, and every time I watch him wrestle, I'm like, holy shit, this guy's incredible. But I will say, so many 5-star matches, in my opinion, from this guy this year. He's nonstop. When you watch him, you're amazed. You can. My favorite thing is, I have friends come over for a weekend. We're pre-gaming on a Friday night, and we have a few pops, have a little bit of the bubbly, and throw on a Will Ospreay match. And my friends are like, "What the hell is this?
Which of these parts of the routine is not like the other?"
But I'm telling you, it works. Smoke a fat one, put on Will Ospreay, and your friends will be like, "What the hell is this? I need to watch this." I have a friend who doesn't watch WWE. He thinks it's laughable. He doesn't understand why I watch that. But I've shown him. He's been on New Japan for 2 years now, and Ospreay is his top guy. He loves Kota Ibushi, but he thinks Ospreay should be the next thing. He was sad and doesn't understand the whole wrestling politics behind Kenny leaving, but he's like, Ospreay is the next guy to be in line, and this is a guy who just gets high with me and watches wrestling. So even if that guy can choose, then y'all can choose too.
So Shirai and Ospreay get you high.
Yeah, I need one for Ospreay though. You can't. Ospreay gets me. I don't know. We'll work on it. Let me know. At the Brady.
Yes. I went with Will Ospreay as well. We'll see if Davey has a different choice. Just to me, what it came down to me was there's a really solid argument for Chris Jericho, because if I take Chris Jericho out of AEW, that company is completely different. Your top heel is probably Cody. And how much that's a facelift to AEW if Cody's in the top heel role and Omega defaults as the top babyface, or vice versa. It's a very different company. So I think no one meant more to one company than Jericho this year. Will Ospreay, you take him out of New Japan, you lose, to me, a lot of great matches. I don't know if the overall arc of New Japan changes all that much, but and I also throw in Kento Miyahara, because if you're not following his stuff from All Japan this year, the Triple Crown defenses, he had an unbelievable year. I think in most years he would win, but to me, Will Ospreay, this was not just the wrestler of the year, but this was maybe the finest year I've seen from somebody. The diversity of matches, when you're talking about the Kota Ibushi program, Wrestling Pack at York Hall in February, whether it was the best of the Super Juniors, turning around, entering the G1 for the first time, a tag team on the side with Robbie Eagles, that they had a really cool story this year with their tag matches, and just altering his style. Like, it was changing a lot of the recklessness and becoming a better wrestler by a significant portion, I thought, this year. Like, this was a marked improvement for Will Ospreay, who was already one of the best on January 1st this year. This was just, from start to finish, one of the best years I've seen from a wrestler. So that, to me, won out over the other arguments. Davey, why was Baron Corbin your wrestler of the year?
Well, sorry, it goes back to that King of the Ring tournament. When the series he had with
Ospreay did not become a king.
No, it's Will Ospreay as well. Not even just the wrestling, but not that he's had a whole load of promos, but when he's spoken at the end of the matches, when they do their speeches in New Japan, he sounds so much better.
And was very open about a lot of personal problems he was having throughout this as well, that I think endeared him to a lot of people too. That, Will Ospreay was kind of polarizing to people at a time, and that seems to have lessened significantly.
He needs to tweet less.
The promo he cut with after the Amazing Red match, where it was very similar to the Cody and Dustin one. It was like, I don't want you to retire here. I lived a childhood dream in wrestling you, and I feel already I'm going through the same pains and problems you are. My neck is fucked, but I want to keep doing this forever. The matches are just unbelievable. Best of the Super Juniors, the G1 especially, but beyond that, the fact he's done all these tournaments this year, he's had great matches with El Phantasmo, has had a cool little mini feud going on there. So looking forward to him versus Hiromu coming up. I don't think you can pick anyone else, and other people have had sensational years, but it's got to be Ospreay.
Okay, we now go to story of the year. So the biggest story in terms of the past 365 days. Last year I chose WWE's TV deals with Fox and the USA Network and the result it had on the WWE stock. Wai chose the Crown Jewel controversy. Braden was Ronda Rousey joining the WWE, and Davey, it was Daniel Bryan returning. So we all had different stories of the year in 2018. For 2019, what was your story of the year, Wai?
It was the introduction of AEW and the debut of AEW Dynamite, and essentially, I suppose, I think a bit of a domino effect to follow after that, with NXT moving on to television as well, and just really adding 4 more hours of wrestling to all of our weeks. So I would say that was probably the biggest change.
Yeah, I'll go second. The launch of AEW, to me, it was one of the biggest stories for a lot of the points that Wai brought up, and just the impact it's going to have on the industry, on free agency, on guys having more leverage now, and just an overall change to the industry. And I think adding a lot of fun to it as well. I get a lot of comedy out of the reaction to the ratings every week that sometimes is very silly stuff. But I think ultimately it's people enjoy watching these two companies put out their best products. And it's you're getting 4 hours of kick-ass wrestling for the most part, save for a Dark Order angle here and there. So it's been, to me, overall, strong positive. Other big stuff this year, this was stuff that happened this year. Anthem buying Access TV, that was a pretty big story. All the talent departures from New Japan. A non-WWE company selling out Madison Square Garden, Roman Reigns' return, and a lot of big deaths this year. Paco Alonso, Perro Aguayo, Harley Race, Silver King, Atsushi Aoki, Gene Okerlund. King Kong Bundy. So there were a lot of notable stories, but I would imagine, are we all in agreement the AEW is the biggest story this year?
I have picked AEW because of like all the reasons you say, but it's also like I love when, like how David said, when non-wrestling fans talk to you because they know you like wrestling, and so many people are like, hey, what's this other show? What is this? Is that WWE? What is that? What is this? Is this wrestling? Is it fighting? And I'm like, no, but how did you hear about it? And they're like, oh, I saw an ad. Or I saw it on TV on TSN here in Canada. And I think that's really interesting because those normal people wouldn't care about wrestling, but now they're like, oh, there's a different show? Like, oh, and then they're like, why do they need more wrestling? I'm like, it's to combat it. It's to go against it. It's a different thing. It's a different entity. And it's interesting because we haven't seen that. I'm a little young. I didn't watch WCW versus Raw every Monday night. I didn't get to do that. I didn't get to live through that. So now that we're seeing this quote unquote Wednesday night wars, it's interesting because it is cool to kind of look back and go, who had the better show? What was the match of the night though? Okay, well, what was this though? Okay, well, it's fun. It's cool to debate that and have your barbershop talks with your friends and such. So I think that's the biggest story, is that a bunch of guys created their own company and it's working.
It legit has changed the whole business.
Yeah.
Because say AEW wasn't a thing and NXT was moving to 2 hours a week anyway, I think they would still be putting out a quality show. But the fact that there are guys like
Dana Brooke just got a 5-year contract.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Guys like Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, who WWE have done nothing with, and now are on mega deals. Like Carl Anderson saying, oh, I've got a second swimming pool now. That wouldn't have happened. Like, I don't think WWE would have been too bothered if they stayed or went, okay, you're going back to Japan, I don't care. Like, that's how their attitude is. But now they're locking up everyone, and people know that. You've seen Randy Orton all year has been tweeting Will Ospreay and has been, like, teasing. Like, It's like, oh, people think I'm going to go to AEW? Come on.
No way.
Randy Orton, I can't imagine him anywhere else. But he knows I can put that thought in management's head and get a few more noughts added to my deal. Like, it's crazy.
Every talent should be thankful that there is a company now that, you know, at the very least, it's sending WWE to want to lock people up for long term and raising the floor of what someone would be making by a notable amount. So that's already showing.
Aren't they
impact.
taking food off the table from other people?
Yeah, it's weird. It looks like they've almost set up a second buffet table that you can eat as much as you want, it seems like. So
They're imagine if Dana Brooke went to AEW though, that 5 years is going to come up soon, and she's going to jump ship. She's going to change the scene.
Let's get into the final two here. It is match of the year, again broken up into female and male match of the year. Last year, for female match of the year, we all chose Becky Lynch versus Charlotte Flair from the Evolution, the one and only Evolution pay-per-view, which did not get a follow-up this year. This year, for female match of the year, we are going to start with Davey.
I'm going to go to NXT TakeOver Toronto, Io Shirai versus Candice LeRae. For many of the reasons why Io Shirai was Women's Wrestler of the Year for me. This feud was the best women's feud that I'd watched this year. And the match was it was the best match on the show, I think. And the fact that this was the first time that there were 2 women's matches on an NXT TakeOver where you only have 5 matches, which is normally made up of a tag, all your titles, and 1 non-title match. And they gave it to the women this year because, and I think bumped the breaking ground,
breakout tournament with Cameron Grimes and Jordan Miles.
They bumped that off the show because this match deserved to be on the TakeOver and delivered.
I agree. That was my women's match of the year. And especially for Candice LeRae, like, it was her first chance, first big breakout performance, I would say, in NXT. Like, for the longest time, she was kind of there as like the second to Johnny Gargano, and this was a chance
Mrs.
for
Gargano
to break out and have, you know, a solid performance. And I think it greatly benefited her as well. And to me, Io Shirai, this heel turn's been phenomenal for her character as well, and someone I really hope doesn't move from NXT this coming year.
I went with TakeOver War Games with Team Ripley versus Team Baszler. To me, this was actually one of my favorite War Games, period. I thought you had a really great sense of unity among the teams, which I really appreciate. You know, I think Rhea Ripley and Shayna Baszler both felt like very legitimate captains in the build-up leading towards it. What stands out to me, of course, was the Dakota Kai heel turn, which I think was wonderfully set up in the weeks prior, but just a vicious attack that you got to see her slamming Tegan Nox repeatedly into the cage, placing the baby faces that were already in the match into a massive disadvantage, which is exactly what the War Games should be about. Baby faces overcoming insurmountable odds, fighting from behind, and the resulting match was just, to me, it was magical. It ended with just this really creative finish with Rhea Ripley handcuffing herself onto Shayna Baszler, which put her in perfect position for that pump handle riptide, which, man, to me was a wonderful combination of both using outside weapons and professional wrestling technique. So a combination of all of these things, the atmosphere, the storytelling, made it my female match of the year.
That match was awesome. I really love that match. Like the War Game, it was the first time the women have been inside that cage thing. It was all awesome. But I too choose Io Shirai and Candice LeRae from TakeOver Toronto. Me and Davey, we were there after our TakeOver tailgate, and we were like kind of down on that show a little bit, and that was the match that made me feel like I got my money's worth out of it. That was my match of the night. That's my women's match of the year. The storytelling of Io Shirai, I really feel like it came into full effect at that match. She came out, her entrance on the big giant Titantron thing in the big arena, it felt like she was just a star. And then, like what John said with Candice, you never really get to see her, and then she did, and they just did some crazy spots. There's like a suicide dive into a DDT. Candice kicks out of the moonsault.
You choked up about it.
Yeah, Io
Spanish
Shirai.
fly off the
Spanish
top.
fly. Like, it's just crazy. I really need to see this feud again, and don't ever joke about Io Shirai leaving NXT, because I won't be doing a podcast on this show anymore if she's not on that show.
Last award, we are at the end, the best male match of the year. Last year, I chose Okada and Kenny Omega from New Japan Dominion. Wai chose the Golden Lovers against the Young Bucks from Strong Style Evolved. Braden, yours was Omega and Jericho that you attended at Wrestle Kingdom 12. And Davey chose Andrade Cien Almas versus Johnny Gargano.
Can't even remember that.
What is that match?
What was I talking about?
Takeover Philadelphia.
Who we had Johnny's video at our TakeOver tailgate talking about that
moment of the year.
That's your moment of the year. Gargano at our video on our tailgate. Yeah.
Braden, what was your match of the year?
This is the toughest one. This is the Oscar goes to best movie. This is the all end all of wrestling. This year, I think I say this every year. This year was the best year of professional wrestling, but like literally, Ishii versus anyone was fucking crazy. I have to shout out that guy. That guy comes at it during the G1, blows me away, and then just kind of coasts for, like, I don't really see him for the rest of the year, but I see so much great stuff from him. Him versus Shingo was amazing. Shingo Ospreay is my runner up, but my match of the year I was at TakeOver New York, Adam Cole versus Johnny Gargano. The boyhood dream has come true. The hero overcomes the evil. It was a storyline with Ciampa and Gargano leading up to this match, and it was suddenly changed due to an injury and everything. Everyone was sad that we weren't going to get this culmination. So Adam Cole is like put into this spot, and he was given the ball and he ran with it. This is maybe one of my favorite matches of all time regarding any company, any country, anything. I was there live, but I've watched it back a bunch of times, and it feels like a movie from start to finish. It's literally a 2 out of 3 falls. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. And like that last fall, we're screaming. The whole arena turned from wearing their Undisputed Era shirts to like hiding it and chanting for Johnny Gargano, because everyone in that arena just changed, and it was just insane. I give that match all the stars because it's just incredible to watch. I could watch that match back to back to back to back. So.
Davey, you were at that show as well?
I picked that match as well. I think what I love is just like, I love crazy spots and just great wrestling, but you got to have the story as well. And this had everything. It had it all. It felt like a movie, as you said. And to be there and feel... You, me, and Jesse, Braden, felt like the only Johnny Gargano fans.
Our whole section was
at the beginning of that match, and then by the end, everyone was for Gargano.
Yeah.
Having Ciampa come out at the end, kind of just ended it beautifully. I love that first fall is just like a really classic wrestling match, and then you have that last shot come out of nowhere. And then you have the submission in the second fall, which makes complete sense because you want to save yourself. It's amazing. It's a thrill ride. It's the ultimate thrill ride, John. That match.
Wai, did you go stateside or did you go overseas?
I went stateside, and if I had known that we were going to do a best moment, I might have picked a different one for this. But I my match of the year, I chose Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan. To me, it was technically far from the best match I saw all year, but I've really come to realize that my favorite matches of the year usually require technique only up to a certain extent, and the rest is really story and atmosphere that make up the rest. And I thought there were strong amounts of all of those in this particular match. Obviously being there in person for this one, I think colors it a little bit different for me. But and you've kind of heard all of our thoughts about the match at the beginning of the podcast. But I will say, I think Daniel Bryan gets a bit lost in the discussion here. He led this match and served this wonderful, selfless story to create this great moment with Kofi Kingston winning, and I think he deserves so much praise here for the performance. And also, really, this marked the 1 year anniversary of his comeback to the WWE and professional wrestling. And I would say by this point, certainly a very, very important member of the WWE roster, and somebody who, was a perfect candidate for this particular match.
My choice was Kazuchika Okada, Will Ospreay from night number 7 of the G1 at Korakuen Hall. It was a 22-minute match, and to me, I went into this where Tanahashi Omega was very high for me going into the G1. That and the Will Ospreay Shingo Takagi final from the Best of the Super Juniors. But to me, this one, it was the closing sequence, and it was a Rainmaker attempt turned into a Spanish Fly for a near fall. Crazy. And then he follows it with a Shooting Star Press. And it was just, I said to myself, this is the match of the year. This has surpassed everything I've seen this year. And then the final stretch saw a Stormbreaker counter, a spinning Rainmaker, and then he hit the proper version and pinned Will Ospreay. I just thought this was a phenomenal, near perfect match between two of the very best in the world, and to me it was the best match of the G1, and that usually for me transitions to best match of the year.
It's crazy. We did a show on our Patreon called Best Match Ever, and we ranked 10. We got all our listeners to rate each matches they gave, and we put them all together and we did this thing, and we were in a little bit of an argument because I know David was so high up on Okada Ospreay that we just rewatched it again.
This was my match of the year until I did the big rewatch.
We went over and rewatched everything. We're roommates and we have a lot of free time on our hands sometimes, and we just watched like all these matches that we just mentioned back this past week, and that match is incredible. That Spanish Fly, like how do you counter that into that?
But also he manages to counter a Rainmaker attempt into the Stormbreaker.
Like how do you even do that?
And Okada gets out of it, but it's like how is that even a thing? How can you imagine?
And that chop spot where he doesn't sell it.
That's the best sell ever, in my opinion. When Ospreay finally manages to get a big chop on Okada, and Okada sells it like he's been shot. It's amazing.
That match is crazy, yeah.
Yeah, a few others I had on my list were like the Ospreay Shingo match. I thought Cody and Dustin at Double or Nothing.
Right.
That was an outstanding match. The Tanahashi Omega one. And also Walter Tyler Bate at the NXT UK TakeOver were some on my short list as well. But that concludes the best of 2019. And now the four of us get a week to go assemble our worst of show because there's no way we could do all of this in like one night or anything like that. So, this was a lengthy one, guys. The best of is now over, so get ready to get negative next week. So, just like this week, we are going to be putting up the worst of show on both Patreon feeds next week on the Tuesday. So you can look forward to that, and then Thursday they will be available to everybody.
January 1st, so good time to sign up to either a Patreon.
Yes, you will be getting, in addition to bonus stuff, I know you guys will have bonus stuff, and we'll be putting up some shows from Japan as well of all the stuff that, amazingly, we are converging here while Wai and I are in Japan. Mm-hmm. Amazing how this all works.
Should we mention our plan with
Yes.
Wednesdays?
Yes, definitely. Wednesday nights, we usually do NXT, but because you two guys are going to be traveling, you've asked us to cover AEW Dynamite. So we're pretty excited to talk about that.
For the next 2 weeks, yes.
Yeah.
So, in addition, this is the Dynamite reviews are something Braden and Davie typically do for their own Patreon feed, but this week we've kindly asked them, hey, would you like to supply your podcast for our main feed just to make sure our audience doesn't go completely without an AEW review while we're in Japan. So thank you, Davie and Braden, and it's a great chance for people to sample what you guys do on your Patreon.
Yeah, definitely. We're super excited. We'll continue to do the upNXT NXT shows every week as well while you're away. But yeah, all I ask for is some New Japan merchandise from over there.
I've had too many people asking me to bring stuff back. It's like,
No,
I only got so much.
Your Taichi Tearaway pants are...
Oh, yeah. You can't buy me shirts because their sizes are too small. Yeah, you can buy me hats, though.
I'll go to an outlet mall and get you some tearaways and tell you these are Taichis.
No, I want the Okada.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for following all of our shows this past year. We greatly appreciate it. It is time to sign off. So, for Davie Portman, Braden Herrington, Wai Ting, I am John Pollock, and this show has been the best.